Hello, good day, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. Hope everybody's doing well in the chat. Shout out to everybody for joining me. Now, let's just get straight to the topic at hand here. Chris Eubank Jr. at the Beterbiev Bivol press conference decided to go for the jugular on pretty much every promoter in the UK, other than the promoter he signed with, Ben Shalom, although he didn't exactly give him a glowing review. We'll come to that in a second, but before we do, let's just make sure I'm sounding okay. Let me know in the chat if I'm sounding okay, if you can hear me. You guys hear me? All right, so somebody getting blocked here already. Bye. Okay, loud and clear. All right, so legendary rant indeed by Eubank Jr. Definitely goated status with that. Crazy. So let's be real here. He said what so many other fighters wish they could say, but they're scared of getting sued. And there'll be a lot of fighters who won't admit this publicly, but they would have been cheering Eubank Jr. on, even if they don't like him. Because a lot of fighters, I want to say most fighters, probably dislike some promoter out there more than they dislike any other boxer. All right? So what did he say? Well, he called specifically Frank Warren, Eddie Hearn, and Kalle Sauerland scumbags. And he said the reason he signed with Ben Shalom is because every other promoter, as in aside from Shalom, is a scumbag. The only person he really bigged up was Turki Alalshikh. He went on to praise Turki Alalshikh and said we've never had a promoter like this in boxing who isn't trying to, use lawyers and, what did he say? Lawyers and accountants to fiddle with numbers and get money, squeeze money out of the fighters. So he made accusations about Frank Warren. He made accusations about his former promoter, Kalle Sauerland. And regarding Eddie Hearn, he was alluding to the fact that Eddie Hearn tried to push ahead with the Conor Benn fight, despite the fact that Conor Benn had failed multiple tests. I mean, we've been through that a zillion times, and I'm sure you guys know my feeling on it. It was awful, terrible form by Eddie Hearn and co. to try and go through with the fight under those circumstances. And then they tried to go round the houses with, not presenting evidence to the British board right away and looking for loopholes and all this kind of stuff and blaming everybody but themselves. I mean, come on. So, yeah. And Eubank referred to being sued by Frank Warren for a couple hundred bags, as somebody said in the chat there. But the real story for me isn't so much what Eubank Jr. said, because many people have felt the same way as him for many years. The real story is Frank Warren's reaction. Frank Warren has a very hot temper. And as soon as Eubank Jr. started calling him a scumbag and making accusations, Frank Warren started, going back and forth with Eubank and telling him to speak up, I can't hear you. And he called Eubank a scumbag back. He got really upset in typical Frank Warren fashion. But then he went on to, in fact, before I do that, right, have a look at this, right? So there's Eubank, and this is streamed on many YouTube channels, but Sky Sports Boxing streamed it. And this picture cracked me up here. This was Eddie Hearn's face when Eubank Jr. was calling him and all the other promoters scumbags. Look at Eddie's face. Yo. I can't get over Eddie. No. It's like he's not sure. He's thinking, nah, he might expose me here. Yo, Eddie's face was priceless when Eubank was ripping into him. Absolutely priceless. Dear oh dear. His face was priceless. But as I say, the bigger story for me was this. How many of you guys saw this in the chat when Frank Warren went on TalkSport and they asked him about the Eubank Jr. situation? How many of you guys saw this? Did you see it? Did you hear what Frank Warren said to, is it Andy Goldstein? Yeah, Andy Goldstein. Did you hear what Frank Warren said to him? So all Andy Goldstein did was read the quote from Chris Eubank Jr., what Chris Eubank Jr. said about Frank Warren at the press conference. All he did is read the quote, and then he asked Frank Warren for his response. And Frank Warren said words to the effect of, Eubank's getting sued, and if you don't stop it, you'll be getting it as well. And Andy Goldstein was like, hang on, what are you talking about? I'm just giving you a right to reply here. I'm just, reading back what Eubank Jr. said. I'm not endorsing his comments. I'm just reading you what he said publicly in front of hundreds of people in the room and thousands, if not millions of people watching the live stream. So the cat's out of the bag. It's already been said. I'm just quoting something that's already been said and asking you for a response. And Frank Warren said, yeah, but you repeated it. Therefore, I'm going to sue you as well if you're not careful. I mean, what a carry on from Frank Warren. What a carry on. And what I'd like to ask Frank Warren, right? You've got all these other platforms who, first of all, the platforms who have, and in fact, before I get onto that, Eddie Hearn also kind of insinuated either that he might sue as well, or maybe he was just referring to Frank Warren potentially suing. I don't know. Okay. But Eddie Hearn looking extra smarmy in these glasses he just started wearing. But anyway, so you've got all these channels which are owned by television networks, right? The DAZN boxing YouTube channel. You got TNT Sports Boxing. You got Top Rank Boxing. You got Matchroom Boxing, right? All these YouTube channels, all these platforms with massive viewership, massive reach, and they have kept the footage up of Eubank Jr. making those accusations about Frank Warren. They're not retracting it, they're keeping it up. At the time of, making this live stream, those bits where Eubank Jr. made those accusations are still up. Okay, so are you going to sue these TV companies, Mr. Warren, for having them, allow these accusations to be made on their platforms? I bet you don't. But when it comes to, one journalist on TalkSport, you want to try have a go. I mean, unbelievable. But Frank Warren, decades ago, for those of you who don't know, maybe you're newer boxing fans, decades ago, the British press gave Frank Warren the nickname Frank the Rit. Right? That's what they nicknamed him, Frank the Rit. That's what they used to call him in the papers. And he gained that reputation because of the amount of times he'd sued people, including media. Yeah? Frank the Rit, because he was just so Rit happy, just suing people left, right, and center for the pettiest of things, seemingly. He threatened to sue people on Twitter and Facebook and YouTube. I'm talking about years ago. According to Adeola Depot, who I don't think he has this channel anymore, but I used to have a channel called Box Talk. This is way before his DAZN and Sky days. And he said that he tried to sue him then for something he said on his YouTube channel. Or threatened to, cease and desist or whatever. I mean, this guy's unbelievable. Which is why I choose my words very carefully around this guy, because, he is something else. And I nearly forgot. Is Frank Warren going to sue Boxing Scene here? Because Boxing Scene have printed verbatim what Eubank Jr. said. Are you going to sue them, Frank? You're going to sue Boxing Scene? Boxing Scene are owned now by ProBox. Used to be owned by CBS, but they were then acquired by, I believe they're called, ProBox, not Showbox, ProBox, excuse me, ProBox. They're acquired by ProBox now. Are you going to sue them, Frank Warren? Because again, verbatim, they have quoted exactly the allegations that Eubank Jr. made against you. All right? Now, here's another reason why it's so ridiculous. First of all, the cat's out of the bag. It's been, streamed on multiple different platforms, probably seen by hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people by this point. And these platforms are not taking it down. Then it's been quoted by Boxing Scene, and that's been read by God knows how many people. Okay? So for Frank Warren to act like, it's going to damage my character for people to be reproducing these allegations on their websites or on their platforms, right? Even if they're just quoting it. Again, the cat's already out the bag. Secondly, here's another reason why it's ridiculous. Frank Warren, when he went on TalkSport, he was so hostile, in my opinion, unnecessarily so, towards Andy Goldstein. It's like, if you're so worried about your reputation, if you're, threatening to sue people to preserve your reputation, for damages, then surely you'd be concerned about the way you come across when a presenter, whatever you want to call him, journalist on the media is just being perfectly polite towards you and asking you to respond to what Eubank Jr. said publicly. Surely you'd think about, okay, I don't want to be hostile towards him. He's just, asking questions. But no, he was openly hostile. So Frank Warren's response is actually going to hurt his reputation. Well, some people would say his reputation is far too hurt for this to make much difference. But those people who are maybe not that familiar with Frank Warren and his, past conduct or whatever, this is not going to put him in a good light in front of those people. Let's just put it that way. Yeah? They're not going to look at this interview and think, oh yeah, Frank Warren's a great guy. Frank Warren's a reasonable person. I mean, if I was seeing that for the first time, I'd think, wow, this guy's unbelievably egotistical and unreasonable. Yeah? Andy Goldstein wasn't trying to say that he approved of what Eubank Jr. Clearly he wasn't. He was literally just quoting and asking for a reply. And Frank Warren starts carrying on like that. Yeah? I mean, this guy, he's been doing this for too long. For too long. Now, irrespective of the allegations Eubank Jr. made against Frank Warren, boxing promoters in general, okay, going back and by the way, many fighters have made allegations about Frank Warren over the years. But his lawyers are powerful, and I'm only aware of Frank Warren losing one lawsuit. I'm only aware of one, or court case, whatever it was. I'm only aware of him losing the Joe Calzaghe case. Other than that, I think it's just all wins. So his team, his legal team, are obviously very powerful. Now, sometimes you get people like, let's say, boxing fans who, when a fighter gets sued successfully or whatever, they will side with the promoter because they'll say, well, the promoter was in the right or else he wouldn't have won the case. The world of legal is about language and the interpretation of it. And so it isn't a necessarily case of right or wrong. It's who puts forward the most convincing argument. Whose interpretation of legalese is most convincing by way of contracts and what have you. And promoters generally have lawyers on deck who are far more experienced at dealing with boxing contracts specifically and the language in boxing contracts than the lawyers that fighters have. Okay, and I'm going to make a presumption here. I don't know this to be the case, but I'm going to make a presumption that the promoters, maybe they don't have a monopoly on certain lawyers that are very experienced with boxing contracts, but I suspect they have something close to that. So when the boxers are out there trying to get lawyers, to read through these boxing contracts, it's very difficult for them to get anyone who's as experienced with it as the promoter's lawyers. That's what I suspect is going on. Because you look at Eubank Jr., he's a multimillionaire. He hasn't got some, cheap lawyer from down the high street. He's obviously paying for good lawyers. But even someone like him, who's paying for good lawyers, finds it difficult to get out of contracts when he believes his contract is up. It's still very difficult for him. You understand? So what is really going on? Shout out to G-Man for the super chat. Big up every time, my bro. So what is really going on? I think it's kind of short-sighted of fans to be blaming the fighters when the promoters are so experienced for so many decades and they know exactly how to word the contracts and all the little lawyers do, And so I remember Johnny Nelson talking about contracts. I think it was in relation to Frank Warren. And I think it was the Anthony Yard situation he was referencing. And he said, many fighters will tell you, if Frank Warren, as your promoter, tells you that you haven't yet fulfilled your contract, then you haven't yet fulfilled your contract. Never mind what your own lawyer says. He's wrong and Frank Warren is right. Again, the inference being that these contracts are worded in such a way that the fighters' lawyers are not picking up on certain things. Perhaps I'm assuming they're not as experienced with boxing contracts as, the promoters' lawyers are. So that's, as an outsider looking in, what appears to be going on to me. Do you know what I mean? Shout out to Cal. He says, Hatman, I need back in the Element group. You need my memes. Love Cal. Shout out to Cal. I'll sort that out, Cal. Shout out to Cal. I'll sort that out. I'll put a post up and start adding people back to the Element group who've done a runner or whatever they've done. Now, let me, somebody said, looks like Junior has janky attorneys. I mean, I wouldn't really put it that way because of what I've just described. At least that's what I suspect is going on, that the promoters have maybe some type of monopoly. They keep lawyers on their payroll who have decades of experience dealing with boxing contracts. And the lawyers who the fighters go to don't have decades of experience dealing with boxing contracts. So maybe it's very difficult to get hold of lawyers like that because the promoters have got them all. Do you understand what I'm saying? That's what I suspect is going on, in my opinion. So in my opinion, most of these promoters are scumbags. From what I've observed over the years, Don King and most of them appear, in my opinion, to be scumbags. So I thought it was hilarious what Eubank Jr. said there. Now, some people are saying Eubank Jr. apologized to avoid legal trouble. But also, somebody said earlier on in the chat, let me just find the comment here. Because somebody said that, let me see. Okay, I've missed the, I swear somebody said that Frank Warren also apologized or something, and somebody said that they suspect Turki Alalshikh made the peace or, intervened and got them to make peace with each other. Where's the comment where somebody said something like that? Can't find it here. Did that person retract? Was that not true? Let me see here. Somebody says Eddie looks like Jeffrey Dahmer trying to sell you a car. With the glasses on. Okay, nah. Thank you, Adam F. Patrick. He says, Eubank and Warren put out a joint statement. Eubank retracted his comments. Okay, a joint statement. He already apologized to Frank. In fact, let me get the joint statement up now. Give me a second. Let me find it so I can read it here. All right, so here's the statement. He said, following today's press conference for the historic Riyadh season event on October 12th, I would like to retract my inaccurate statements and offer my apologies to Frank Warren, Eddie Hearn, and Kalle Sauerland. I now wish to focus purely on boxing and preparing for a huge fight in Riyadh next month. The furious Frank Warren, okay, it doesn't have the full statement here. I look forward to seeing him. Oh, hang on, what's this? Okay, this is Frank Warren accepting the apology. He said, I accept Chris's apology and retraction. I too have said things before and apologized to him. Also, if any criticism of him has upset him in the past. Okay, so Frank Warren also has apologized to Eubank Jr. And he went on to say, I look forward to seeing him compete on this huge Riyadh season card. We look ahead to some potentially massive bouts in the future. All right, so yeah, Eubank Jr. apologized and retracted his statement, and Frank Warren also apologized. It's not like Frank Warren to apologize. Trust me, I've been following this guy since the 90s. It's not like Frank Warren to apologize, especially not when someone has just made accusations against him. So I tend to concur with the people who said that Turki Alalshikh may have intervened in this situation. I tend to concur with that. Yeah. Turki Alalshikh, I would imagine, got involved. Said, this is not a good look for the event. Let me bring you two guys together behind the scenes, knock your heads together, and you're both going to apologize. Like some kind of godfather. Knocking heads together and smoothing the situation out. Yeah, I suspect that's what's happened with Turki Alalshikh. He's made them both apologize. But at the end of the day, right, as much as Eubank Jr. has retracted his statement, how many of us actually believe that it's a genuine retraction and that he didn't mean what he said? How many of us really believe that? And it's out there now, right? What's been said has been said. It's out there. So he can say he's taking it back, but nobody's going to unhear it. Yeah. A shout out to Black Dynamite for the super chat. He said, Bricktop, the boxing bully, moving like a proper thug. Yeah, crazy. So, shout out to Cal for the super chat. He said, how much would Turkey have to pay you, Hatman, to hold your hand? Like he did with Bricktop. More than Eubank's hair or Ben's egg fund. Yeah, Eubank's hair is crazy. That tattooed on hair, that's crazy. If that's what it is. I mean, that's what it looks like. Looks like he's got tattooed hair on. Yeah. So how much would he have to pay me? My price would be very high. I'm not sure he could come up with enough money. But yeah, there's something else I want to talk about here. Bear with me a second. Ayed says, Ben Shalom's response was so disappointing. I know what you're saying. It almost seems like an opportunity missed because Frank Warren and Eddie Hearn haven't exactly been friendly to him publicly, right? So some people are going to see that as disappointing. But anyway, let me get on to a few other things here. So, first of all, Spencer Brown, he has advised Anthony Joshua against taking a rematch with Daniel Dubois. Now, bear in mind, Spencer Brown is not Anthony Joshua's promoter. To my knowledge, he's not being paid by Anthony Joshua to be any kind of advisor. And yet here he is caring more about AJ's welfare than his actual promoter, Eddie Hearn. I mean, unbelievable, these guys. Eddie Hearn, I mean, good God. Spencer Brown saying, nah, don't do it. Eddie Hearn's trying to compare it to when AJ rematched Ruiz, and when he rematched Usyk, he did better in the rematches. That's because he didn't get, those fights, the first fight with Ruiz and the first fight with Usyk, were not a complete whitewash to the point where AJ didn't win more than 10 seconds. Yeah? And he didn't finish the fight nearly out cold. So against Andy Ruiz, he won the first 2 rounds. He was outboxing my man. Then he dropped him in the third with a big left hook. It looked like the fight was over. He went rushing in, overexcited, no regard for defense, got clipped, and couldn't recover. But he at least had something to build on. That was his first ever loss. He was still in his 20s, I think, at the time. So he had time on his side. And as I say, he won the first 2 rounds and he dropped the guy. So there was something to build on there. And I always said in the run-up to that fight, as long as AJ's stamina holds up, he can win the fight. He can outbox Ruiz. I saw enough in the first 2 rounds of the first fight to believe that AJ, if his stamina held up, could win the rematch. He had the skills to. Now, with Alexander Usyk, yeah, he got schooled. He got outboxed. He didn't get nearly knocked out cold. He didn't get dropped once. So, yeah, both times I thought he shouldn't take the rematch, but not because of his health. I thought he shouldn't take the rematch because I wanted to see an undisputed fight. And AJ doing these rematches was holding that up. Yeah? He was clogging up the, however you want to describe it, the boxing system. It was just constant rematches. So as a boxing fan, I wanted to see AJ step aside and let, at the time it would have been Ruiz unify with Wilder. And when he lost to Usyk, it would have been Usyk unifying with Fury, although, that was a story in itself. So that was the main reason. And also because I thought AJ needed to drop down from world level and have some learning fights, which he never had early on in his career, or not enough of them anyway, before he started fighting people like Klitschko. He was still very green in terms of his technique. But this situation with Dubois is very different. He's experienced now. He should have the know-how at this stage of his career to be able to navigate his way through a fight against various different styles and what have you. But evidently he doesn't. Okay, and if you don't know those things by this age, by this stage of your career, you're never going to know them. AJ is like a guy that just paints by the numbers. He needs instructions. Everything that goes on in a boxing ring, he needs to know an answer from a trainer. What do I do when this happens? There's just no intuition there, or very little intuition there from AJ. And you've just been beaten from pillar to post, completely dominated and knocked out, nearly out cold by a much younger man. That is a totally different situation than when he fought Ruiz and Usyk. Okay, Usyk being an older guy, right? So for Eddie Hearn to try and compare it to those situations is just a head shaker to me. Yeah, he should be advising AJ to stay the hell away from Daniel Dubois. But he revealed that AJ's got one more contract with Riyadh season. One more fight left with Riyadh season on his contract. And presumably Eddie Hearn wants that fight to be the biggest one possible and to make the most money possible. And presumably that would be the Daniel Dubois rematch. I mean, dear, oh dear, oh dear. This guy who calls Anthony Joshua his friend. I mean, what kind of friend is that? If you were his friend, you'd be telling him a bare minimum, don't fight Dubois in a rematch. I mean, it was less competitive than Wilder against Zhang. He wasn't calling for Wilder to rematch Zhang. You know, he said there was no justification for Wilder to rematch Zhang. But somehow he thinks there's a justification for AJ to rematch Dubois. Like, give it a rest. There's too many rematches in boxing, particularly the heavyweight division. Tired of all these rematches, especially in world title fights. Too much, man. Let Dubois move on and fight whoever. The winner of Usyk Fury 2, Martin Bakole, Ajit Kabayel, whoever else is out there, you know. I mean, I wouldn't say a rematch of Hrgovic yet. He needs to come back and, you know, get some wins. But given the way Dubois dealt with Joshua, it makes the Hrgovic, it makes Hrgovic's performance against Dubois look a lot better now, doesn't it? Because people were really trashing Hrgovic after the Dubois fight. And I had to come out and say, you know what? No, I think people are being too harsh. I think Hrgovic is a very good fighter. He just fought the wrong fight. You know, he emptied the tank early and punched himself out, basically. But in the first 3-4 rounds, he was dominating the fight. He was landing his right hand to plenty. He couldn't miss Dubois. And whenever Dubois did fire back, Hrgovic was able to firm it. He was able to take the power, no problem. And he wasn't, you know, scared to get hit like AJ was, you know, moving around the ring with an anxious look on his face. Hrgovic was just pure alpha. You know, go back and watch that fight now, having seen what you saw Dubois do to Joshua. And now you're going to see that Hrgovic maybe is better than you thought he was. He just needs to pace himself better if he gets a rematch with Dubois. But yeah, Martin Bakole would be a great fight. I'd love to see that one. You could have Daniel Dubois against Zhang. That'd be a good fight. You couldn't scoff at or you couldn't complain about Dubois against Joseph Parker. You know, 2 Queensberry fighters. So plenty of options there for Dubois, and I'd rather see that than run back this pointless rematch, which will probably end even earlier than the last one. like, come on. Why? And in fact, on another level, why would a guy like AJ even be getting that opportunity? Why was there even a rematch clause in the contract? That right there is a scandal, because this was a voluntary defense for Daniel Dubois. There shouldn't be a rematch clause in the contract. But then again, you know, you look at Dubois and the people advising him, and he agreed to take the fight on those terms. He wanted the opportunity to take a big scalp and, you know, elevate his career to the next level commercially. And so he made those concessions in order to get that opportunity. Because people think about, like, for example, AJ's name was always put first before Dubois. He walked to the ring first and all this kind of stuff as if he was the champion. And Dubois says that's a disrespect. Well, you accepted that disrespect. You were happy to, because AJ is, as Dubois called him, the king, or was the king in terms of commercial value. And so, you know, that's what happens. If Dubois was like a unified champion and had beaten everybody, you know, beaten Fury and Usyk and all that, then I don't think you could have ever made an argument for having AJ's name first. But instead, Dubois was a guy who was given a belt that he didn't win in the ring. And, you know, he really has been chasing the AJ fight for many years. So in order to validate himself as a champion, he really needed the AJ fight for that reason as well. You know, to go in there with a brand name, take him down, and now people can accept that you're actually a champion. That idea. But anyway, it is what it is. Dubois, for whatever reason, agreed to the terms, rematch clause in the contract, even though a two-way rematch clause when it's a voluntary defense. Yeah, normally when a champion is making a voluntary defense, there'll be a rematch clause in the contract, but only for him, only for the champion. If he loses, there won't be one for the challenger. Yeah, you only normally see that in unifications. So it is what it is. Anyway, all the other stuff aside, the main event of the, for the press conference that Eubank Jr. was involved with earlier today, the main event was almost overshadowed. And the promo for the main event, Beterbiev versus Bivol, I'm going to say it's my personal favorite. It's the best promo, for me personally, that Riyadh season have done yet. What a fantastic promo. I knew it was going to be epic from the posters they put out. You guys remember the poster when this fight first got announced? Just from the poster alone, I was like, wow, I can't wait to see the promo. And these promos, some of these promos are so good. I wish they did make them into movies, like that. It's kind of disappointing that all we'll ever get out of it is a promo and a boxing match. It's almost like the boxing match can't do it justice. I want to see the actual movie. Yeah, so incredible promo. Definitely my favorite one yet with Beterbiev and Bivol. Let me get back to the chat room here. Yeah, somebody says Game of Thrones vibe. I want to say a bit more gritty than Game of Thrones, A bit more gritty than that. A shout out to Callum for the super chat. Thank you, sir. He said AJ looked scared before the fight, probably PTSD from sparring, maybe. I mean, AJ's looked scared for a long time before fights. He's been wearing that, nervous look on his face. I'm not even going to say since the first Ruiz fight, because he walked to the ring before the first Ruiz fight with a nervous look on his face. You guys remember that? That was the first time I ever actually noticed it with AJ. He was chewing his gum shield and like somebody was massaging his neck when he was in the ring during the introductions. He looked really weird. And AJ is a weird guy. Dylan White said it best a couple years back. That AJ is a weird guy. He's got such a robotic mind, And that robotic mind is reflected in his boxing performances. His lack of intuitive ability. Being able to figure things out for yourself in the ring. Because the promoter's not going to be able to, not the promoter, the trainer is not going to be able to hold your hand and tell you exactly how to react to every single punch and every single scenario. There are too many variables for that. So you're going to have to actually have some type of, intuitive ability where you can just sense and know the right things to do in the right situation. And not need a trainer to hold your hand through everything. But AJ's just got such a robotic mind. When he was in the corner after the fourth round and, he was looking for reassurance from Ben Davison. He was like, warrior mindset. Yeah, these are the moments we live for, right? And Ben Davison was, yeah, of course, yeah. These are the it was almost like AJ had gone into a childlike state. The guy's a multi-millionaire and he's vastly experienced in boxing, but he just came across like a child in that moment. I'm like, how is this guy a boxing veteran? And he still seems that lost that he needs Ben Davison, to give him reassurance, this, that, and the other. Really, really odd. Strange guy. All right, comment of the night so far. Jackie Boy Johnson said he looked nervous because David A backed him to win. Everything hinges on that. And in fact, I was waiting for David Hayes' prediction because I might have changed mine had I known that David Hayes was picking Joshua as well. Oh my gosh. David Hayes' prediction record has got to be the worst in the world. And on the opposite end of the scale, you got to say that Duke McKenzie's on a roll. Yeah? Duke McKenzie picked Usyk to beat Fury, as I did and as many other people did. I mean, not many people in the media, very few boxing pundits in the media picked Usyk. But a lot of the public were picking Usyk to win. I want to say at least 40% of the public, 40% of the public were picking Usyk. So it wasn't that rare to come across people who are picking Usyk. As I say, I picked him. Many of you guys picked him to beat Fury. But with the AJ Dubois fight, that was a better pick, I think, from Duke McKenzie. And he was adamant from day one that Dubois was going to win. So big up Duke McKenzie. As I say, he's on a roll. Four Fox says, AJ still seems like a novice in terms of his mentality. He does. And isn't that strange? As experienced as he is at his age, he still has this like novice mentality. It's really weird. Really weird. he's like an NPC. It's really strange. Shout out to Hyperspaz for the super chat. He says, possible Canelo calling out Bivol in case he loses. I wouldn't want to see Canelo Bivol too, personally. You know? The first fight was comfortable enough for Bivol. I don't really see a reason to want to, to see a rematch between him and Canelo. But Canelo, as other people said, seemed to like the idea of a Bivol rematch because he's not risking his belts at 168. And he's got an excuse to fall back on. I just went up too many weight classes. The guys were too big up there. So it's a risk, yes, but it's a risk which isn't as damaging if he was, a defeat at light heavyweight, the way I assume he sees it, isn't as damaging as a defeat at 168 super middleweight. Yeah, Beterbiev Bivol, it's been a long time coming. Fantastic fight. You got Wardley Clark 2 on the undercard. Eubank Jr. having a little run out against Zerameta. And by the way, if any of you got any intel on why Eubank Jr. has switched trainers again, because he's now with Jonathan Banks. And one of the weird things, Eubank Jr.'s performance in the Liam Smith rematch was such an improvement from the first fight that I didn't understand why he didn't stick with Bomac. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But then you start hearing these stories, right? A couple months after the Liam Smith rematch, obviously Bomac was locked up for that, silly incident, silly on his part. And you started hearing all this talk about Eubank Jr. fighting Terence Crawford, who's also trained by Bomac. And I'm like, well, how would that work? And why is Eubank Jr. even talking about fighting Terence Crawford? Was there a bust up between them in the gym? I don't know if any of you have got any intel on that, excuse me. I'd be interested to hear it. Why was Eubank Jr. talking about fighting, and he's still talking about fighting Terence Crawford? Why has he left Bomac? He's now with Jonathan Banks. Strange. Black Dynamite says AJ should have went the Vlad route in his boxing style. They both have the same kind of mindset in terms of overcautiousness. Yeah, I always felt like he actually, never mind Eubank, I always felt that AJ should have gone with Jonathan Banks and James Ali Bashir. You know, when he was shopping around for new trainers, I always felt he should have gone with them for that reason. Because he's so similar to Vlad. Although I don't think, you know, as much as Vlad was scared of getting hit and all that, his mind is not as robotic as AJ's mind. You know, AJ's mind is even more robotic than that. It's really, really weird. All right, somebody says Banks is an awful trainer, genuinely awful. I disagree. He worked with Vladimir Klitschko for many fights after Manny Stewart passed away. Linkage says Bomac probably banned from the UK after that incident. Yeah, but Eubank Jr.'s next fight is not in the UK. It's in Saudi, right? And yes, James Ali Bashir was one of the first guys. This is a comment from 4Fox. He says, James Ali Bashir was one of the first guys I heard saying Usyk would beat all the heavyweights if he moved up. This was before Usyk even beat Glowacki. Yeah, that's when James Ali Bashir was training Usyk. He was his trainer back then. King Khan says, scared of getting hit. That smart in boxing. Well, no, it's not really. Being scared of getting hit is different than, how can I word this now? You don't want to get hit because, you know, or you want to limit the amount you get hit because it's going to help you win rounds and it's ultimately going to help you win the fight. So you don't want to get hit from a logical perspective, right? But being scared of getting hit is a different thing. That's when you're actually anxious about getting hit. You understand? It's not good to be anxious about getting hit because it actually works against you. As I said in the video I uploaded earlier on today, Ben, oh God, I forget his name now. Bro Cream Ben, right? His trainer, Ben Davison. He was telling Anthony Joshua in the corner, you're moving around the ring and you're looking non-threatening. Yeah, because he was scared of getting hit. And that manifested in this like scared body language. Even the look in his eyes, right? AJ's eyes were like, you know, the size of flipping saucers. And when you're giving off that, that's a manifestation of someone who's scared of being hit. And when you give off those signals to your opponent, it's like a red rag to a bull. So it's not good to be scared of getting hit. Yeah, logically, you don't want to get hit because that's going to help your opponent win, but you want to be calm. You don't want to be scared. You know? You need to be switched on, yes, but relaxed mentally. Alert, but relaxed. Sounds like a contradiction, but it's not. Yeah? Shout out to Anne. Comment reads, people say, and thank you for the super chat. Comment reads, people say AJ fought an over-the-hill Klitschko, but he fought him only 18 months after Fury. Respect from Ireland, and respect to you too, sir. Shout out to Hyperspaz for another super chat. He says, sorry, I meant Canelo could take credit for rematch without taking it if Bivol loses. Okay, I see what you're saying. You know, boxing is full of fighters who try to take credit for things that they didn't actually do. I mean, I saw a thumbnail with a headline on a video. I didn't actually watch the video, but it was Tommy Fury being interviewed after the Dubois Joshua fight. And it quoted Tommy Fury as saying, "This proves that Tyson's the best." Now, I hope they're misquoting him, because if Tommy Fury actually said that, this has got to be a new low for Team Fury. How could Dubois destroying AJ possibly then mean that Tyson Fury is the best heavyweight in the world? Or even the best heavyweight in the UK, since he hasn't beaten AJ or Dubois. So Dubois beats AJ, and that somehow makes Fury the best. Bizarre. But people have been doing them kind of mental gymnastics for years, you know? And if you really break it down, you know, you can say, well, AJ beat Joseph Parker. Joseph Parker beat, you know, Deontay Wilder. But Joseph Parker lost to Joe Joyce. Joe Joyce beat Daniel Dubois. You could find some kind of way of, you know, finding a link between AJ and Dubois in a way where AJ did better. I mean, I mentioned in a couple of videos that AJ lasted 24 rounds with Usyk and Dubois couldn't last the distance with him once. Styles make fights, right? So, yeah, but anyway, yeah, to your point, comment says, sorry, I meant Canelo could take credit for rematch without taking it if Bivol loses. Yeah, fighters do that a lot. They say, see, you wanted me to fight this guy. You wanted me to rematch this guy. He just got beat. He can't really be that good. I would have beaten him. That's what Mayweather used to do so much. You know, there was a bunch of people that he didn't fight. And then when they lost, he wanted to come out the woodwork and take credit as if he's the one that had beat them. God, that used to drive me up the wall, honestly, because it completely fails to acknowledge the rock, paper, scissors nature of boxing. And boxing is rock, paper, scissors. Yeah, that's what it's like. If it weren't like that, Muhammad Ali never would have beaten George Foreman. It is like that. And once you realize that's how it is, you're not going to take this type of stuff from certain fighters where they say, oh, well, he got beat by such and such, therefore I don't have to fight him. You're not going to take that from them, because you know that, no, in order to prove yourself the best, you have to go out there and fight everybody there is to fight. You don't start cherry picking and say, oh, well, he lost, so he lost a couple years back, I don't need to fight him. Nah, mate. Daniel Dubois lost last year, right? Quit against Usyk. Prior to that, he quit against Joyce. Tyson Fury, I'm not saying he did do this, but he could have, and this is the kind of thing he likes to do. I don't need to fight Dubois. He needs to rematch Joyce. He needs to rematch Usyk before he gets a crack at me. He's no good. Shout out to Cal for the super chat. He said, Usyk has never dropped me, so I'm top 15. Never dropped me either. I must be top 15. Oh, yeah. That's another point somebody made there. King KO said, Fury also got whooped by Ngannou, a novice. Indeed, boxing is rock, paper, scissors. It's rock, paper, scissors. Yeah. Especially heavyweight boxing, more than any other division. Heavyweight boxing is rock, paper, scissors. It isn't straightforward at all. The way these styles match up will often surprise you. I mean, you look at the 1970s. People like Ken Norton, right? He was kind of a dark horse in the division. He was like an unknown fighter when he fought Muhammad Ali the first time, and that was a big upset when he beat him, broke his jaw in the first fight. And that's a Ken Norton who'd already been chinned earlier on in his career. And after that, he got chinned as well. Yeah, got chinned by Jerry Cooney. Ernie Shavers. I'm sure he got chinned by Ernie Shavers as well. But Ken Norton got chinned a bunch of times in his career. But people still look at Ken Norton today as a quality fighter, right? You don't look at Ken Norton as somebody who was a bum or this, that, or the other. Obviously got chinned by George Foreman in 2 rounds, wiped out. And Ali beat Foreman. But Ali, and he stopped Foreman, right, in 8 rounds. But he always struggled, Muhammad Ali, with Ken Norton. Just couldn't do nothing with him. Couldn't do nothing with a guy who was wiped out early by George Foreman. You know, so that's the nature of boxing, man. It's rock, paper, scissors. And that's why it's important as fans that when somebody tries to call themselves the best, when somebody holds a world title belt, that we demand that they fight all of their contemporaries and leave no stone unturned. If you're going to say you're the greatest, like, nah, you better be fighting everybody. Yeah, you better be fighting everybody. Yeah, that's one of the guys, just remember now, that's one of the guys who Ken Norton got chinned by, a guy called Jose Luis Garcia, who was a small guy as well. I think he weighed less than 200 pounds when Ken Norton fought him. Go look that one up. Okay, Ken Norton got chinned by a guy who weighed like 180 pounds. Think about that. But he's still thought of today as one of the top contenders and eventually a champion, right? He was a, however you want to describe him, paper champion. He was champion for a very short amount of time until he fought Larry Holmes, who took that belt off him. And that 15th round, by the way, if any of you haven't seen Ken Norton versus Larry Holmes, go watch the 15th round, right? If you don't want to sit through the whole 15, just watch the last round of the fight. What a tremendous round of boxing that is. Tremendous round of boxing. Okay, shout out again for the super chat and says, I'm a proud Irishman, but I am convinced that the great Steve Collins, and he was great, ran into retirement to avoid Calzaghe. What do you think? That might be true. You know, I remember that particular period when Calzaghe was chasing down the Steve Collins fight. And Steve Collins fought this guy who was either American or Canadian, but I swear that he was a fireman. You know, he's one of these part-time pros who has a day job. And he fought this guy who was like a fireman or something, or he was Canadian or American, fireman. And this guy dropped Steve Collins heavy. And Collins was known for having a real good chin. Obviously, he'd been down in fights before. He was down against Eubank. But this guy, unknown fighter, comes steaming out early and like flattens Steve Collins. I'm not sure if Collins ever fought again after that. But it seemed like that fight spooked him. Like he felt like his punch resistance wasn't the same after that fight, and he decided to call it a day. So I don't know whether he ran into retirement purely to avoid Calzaghe, or he was also spooked by maybe diminishing punch resistance. God knows what was happening in the gym, you know, that kind of thing. But there was definitely a narrative out there, and many people do believe it to this day, that Collins was running from Calzaghe and that's the reason he retired. But who knows? Who knows? Again, shout out for the super chat. I appreciate it. Angie says AJ's rubbish. I could be Anthony Joshua. You should sign up with one of the promoters and go fight him then. Make yourself millions knocking out Anthony Joshua. If I could beat him, that's what I'd be doing. I'd be calling for the fight. The Joker says, Hatman, who had worse punch resistance, AJ or Vlad? It's a very good question. I'm going to say AJ because I reckon it took about the same amount of force to hurt or drop the pair of them. But I think Vlad was able to recover a bit better. So his powers of recovery were a bit better than AJ's. But psychologically, they both reacted in a similar way to being hurt. AJ did better in terms of when he was hurt in the Dubois fight than he did in the Ruiz fight, because I think he went into the fight expecting he probably would get hurt. So he kind of mentally prepared himself for it. But prior to that, certainly in the Ruiz fight, when he got hurt early against Usyk, AJ kind of goes into this deer in the headlights mode, where he looks panicked. And Vlad was like that as well. When Vlad got stopped by Corey Sanders, deer in the headlights. When Vlad was stopped by Lamont Brewster. When Vlad was stopped by Ross Purity. And even when he fought Sam Peter the first time he won that fight, but he was absolutely terrified. I mean, you go watch that Sam Peter fight. Vlad ended up going down from certain shots that weren't even that hard. It's like he went down out of anxiety, like he was having a panic attack, and then he just went down on one knee. So both of them had a similar mentality. They would panic, to some extent when they get hit. In fact, I think Vlad panicked a bit more than AJ because AJ, when he's hurt, in certain situations, will try and fire straight back. Like he did with Dylan White, he tried to fire straight back. Even in the Ruiz fight, when he got off the canvas, the first time he tried to hold, but in other rounds when he was still hurt, he was trying to fire back. Whereas Vlad, when he was hurt, he did fire back against AJ, but all the other times I saw him hurt in his career, he would just hold and run, and he would never fire back. So, yeah, I want to say Vlad's punch resistance was similar to AJ's in terms of the force that it takes to drop them, but Vlad seemed to recover a bit better from being knocked down. AJ, when he gets hit and hurt, he stays hit for like rounds and rounds after it. It's like in boxing, sometimes when you get hit and hurt early in a fight, your punch resistance, and some of you might have experienced this for yourselves if you've boxed, or you might have seen it and observed it in certain fights over the years. But sometimes when you get hit and hurt early, your punch resistance for a while after that actually gets better during the fight. It's like you warm up to taking the punches. They call it getting caught cold. You get caught with a shot early in the fight when you're not used to the impact. You find yourself on the canvas. But once you get used to it, it's like, oh, the shot that dropped you in the first round, now it's not dropping you anymore. Now you're able to take it. AJ doesn't seem to have that capacity. Yeah, when he gets hit and hurt, he stays hit and hurt for rounds and rounds and rounds. In the shot that ended the fight against Dubois was, to me, it didn't look as hard as the shot that dropped him in the first round. But he was still hurt from the first round. So his punch resistance was already diminished by the time he got laid out like that. Robert O'Donoghue says the Klitschko's were boring. That was a dark age of boxing. It really was. People, slag off the heavyweight division today. But I'm telling you now, in decades to come, they're going to be bigging it up because this is a very exciting heavyweight era. It's fantastically exciting. They've had upsets, knockouts all over the place, wild fights. Dubois has been saying in his videos that, and remember, Dubois has been watching boxing since the 70s. He's older than me. He watched Muhammad Ali fight. Okay? And he's saying this is the deepest heavyweight division he's ever seen, deeper than the 70s. Now, you can argue that the fighters today aren't as good, but that's an opinion. By deep, he has to mean, surely, that there's lots of competition. You don't just have 2 or 3 guys who are the best and then nobody else can compete with them. No. Today's heavyweight division is nothing like that. Okay? The top guys are not safe at all. There are so many danger men in today's heavyweight division. So many danger men. So, yeah, I definitely agree with Dwyer on that. It's deep in that sense. A shout out to Cal for the super chat. He says, in sparring, the first punch wakes me up. Yeah, it can be like that. You know, you go in there, maybe sometimes too relaxed, and you have to get hit to switch on. Some people are like that. You have to get hit and feel the force of the shot, feel that jolt to wake you up and, you know, get you alert. Or like, hang on, I'm in a fight here. Yeah. A lot of people who haven't boxed ask you what it's like to get hit. It looks like it hurts. You know, especially when you're talking to girls, they always say it looks like it hurts. Getting punched in the face actually doesn't hurt at all normally. It's a weird feeling. It's a weird sensation. It's like a jolting sensation. And the strangest thing about getting hit is you can hear the punches hit your face. That's one of the strangest things to get used to is, you know, the sound of getting punched and this like kind of jolting feeling when you get hit. So it doesn't hurt at all, funny enough, unless you get hit, let's say, I don't know, on the nose in a particular way, or you get a cut eye, or you've got like a massive swelling on your eye and then you're getting punched on that. That's going to hurt like hell, right? Or it could anyway. But generally, when you're just getting punched in the face, punched in the mouth, punched in the chin, it doesn't hurt. It's just a weird, there's nothing else that feels like it. It's just a weird feeling. It's like a weird jolting feeling. And you can hear the sound of the punch. And, you know, after a while, you get used to it. And it becomes like, you know, normal to you. After a while, that doesn't seem strange. But I remember when I first started boxing, the first time getting hit, I was like, wow, that didn't feel like I expected it to feel. You know, like that. And getting hit, by the way, with boxing gloves feels different to getting hit with bare knuckles. Yeah, if you ever get hit with bare knuckles, you definitely feel less of an impact. In the fights I've had in the street from when I was in school and, you know, when I was a bouncer and all that, you feel the impact less with bare knuckles. Obviously, you're more prone to getting cut and all that kind of stuff, but I don't know. Maybe it's because of the people I was fighting weren't really up to much compared to the boxers that I was in the gym sparring and the people I was fighting in amateur bouts. I don't know, but I don't ever recall a street fight where I got hit and the punch had the kind of impact that the shots I got hit with in boxing felt. You know, I don't ever recall that. In a street fight, there was so many street fights I had where I thought I didn't actually get hit in the fight. Okay, but people who watched it said, no, when he hit you with this punch and that punch, I was like, did he even hit me? I didn't even think I got hit. I thought it was just me hitting him. And then I go home and I'm like, got cuts here and bruises. And I'm like, oh, wow, I did get hit. So I don't know, maybe it's the adrenaline because, you know, in a street fight, it's like a dangerous situation. Maybe the adrenaline is higher than it is when you're boxing. I don't know, but yeah, getting hit with bare knuckles, I don't feel it. It's not as much of a jolt as getting hit with, you know, gloves on. You know, it's been a long time since I had a street fight. Last street fight I had was 2009? Is it 2009? I think the last street fight I had was about 2009. Yeah, about 2008 maybe. 2008, 2009, somewhere around there was the last street fight I had. I was on the bus. Whatever year Watchmen, you know the movie Watchmen? Whatever year that movie came out, that's the last time I had a street fight. On the bus, yeah? So I was on a bus, and I was either going down the stairs in a double-decker bus or up the stairs. I think I was going up the stairs. I think I just got on the bus, and I was going up the stairs. And these two guys came rushing down the stairs. They were like 19, 20, right? At the time, I was in my late 20s or whatever. And they came rushing down the stairs, like barged me out of the way to get off the bus. And so I grabbed one of them by his jacket. You know what I mean? I grabbed one of them by his jacket and said, you know, I'm not going to repeat what I said for the sake of the algorithm. But I grabbed him by his jacket and said, what the hell do you think you're doing? And then I shoved him off the stairs. And then he came towards me like he wanted to start something. So I punched him and he fell onto some passages. I'm not condoning any of this behavior, folks. But this is just what happened last street fight I had. So punched him and he fell into some passengers. And then his mate who he was with didn't quite know what to do. He was just looking at me and I was looking at him. I was like, yeah, you want some as well? And then to my surprise, he came over and I had some headphones on. Yeah. Earbuds, whatever. And, you know, with the wire, not the new ones they have these days, the AirPods. And he took my, ripped the thingies off, the little earphones off, and then he legged it off with them, yeah? And foolishly, I chased after him, not knowing it actually set me into a trap, because the guy who I hit, he's a lot smaller than me, right? There's two guys, they're both I don't know, can't have been any more than 12, 13 stone. Yeah, that's 170, 180 pounds, and I'm 230 pounds. And I'm a boxer, I'm a fighter, so I fancied my chances against the pair of them, right? But anyway, so when I hit the one guy, I didn't hit him that hard because I was worried that I might do him serious damage. I just wanted to hit him just to get him out of the way. Yeah, because I was actually thinking consciously, I don't want to hit him too hard because I don't want to case, right? So I hit him. And then when the other guy took my earphones and ran off, I went after him, yeah? But because I hadn't knocked the other one out, because I just gave him a little jab just to sit him down, he came up from behind and started punching me in the back of the head. When I went for that guy, it was a trap. So he started punching me in the back of the head, and the other guy came back on the bus. He started punching me in the front of the head. So I'm fighting with two of them now. One of them is behind, the other one's in front, and I'm fighting with both of them. I mean, thankfully, neither one of them could punch. Otherwise, I would have lost the fight. But yeah, that's the last street fight I had. That was whatever year Watchmen came out. A shout out to Cal again. He says, don't think I have any feeling in my snoz now. Yeah, my nose is pretty numb now. That's one of the things. When you first start boxing as a kid, you're kind of scared about getting punched in the nose because, you grow up playing football and having, little fights in school. And when you get hit on the nose, it really stings and your eyes water and all that kind of stuff. Once you start boxing and you get hit on the nose all the time, your eyes never water anymore. You might get a little blood out of your nose every now and then, but you don't get that stinging feeling anymore when you get punched in the nose because the nerve endings in your nose are shot to bits. You don't feel nothing in your nose anymore. Cal says, how am I getting demonetized for something he did 20 years ago? YouTube is in the bin. P.S. I sent you a DM on Patreon, bro. Yeah, shout out to Cal, man. I'll definitely check the DM. I'll get you back in the Element group ASAP. The Joker says, Hatman, as you would say, that wasn't no street fight. That was a one-sided drubbing. Man did those utes like Dubois did AJ. Yeah, and in that situation there, one guy's hit me on the back of the head. The other guy's hit me on the front of the head. And I didn't feel any of the punches. I was punching the one in front of me back, and I was trying to grab the guy from behind me. Yeah, I didn't feel any of the punches. But in a boxing ring, I always feel the jolt, King Khan says, because they're smaller than you. Yeah, but I've had street fights against people bigger than me too. And I never recall feeling the punches. You know, I had a fight in school. I was maybe 12 or 13, and I had a fight with an older kid who was like, I think a year or two older than me, and he was a lot bigger than me at the time. And I had a fight with this guy, and he was so much stronger than me at the time. You know, I was big for my age, but he was big for his age too. And he was just so much stronger than me. So I went charging in with this fight. And this was maybe around the time when I just started boxing. So I really didn't know how to fight. I was just strong and aggressive. And I really didn't know how to use my hands properly. So I was just trying to do anything I could to this guy. You know, trying to headbutt him, elbow him, bite him, do anything. Because he was stronger than me and bigger than me. And after the fight, at the end of it, we literally fought to a standstill. There was like one of his friends there and two of my brother's friends there. And me and this guy fought to a standstill till we were both knackered. Back then, he had like these dungarees. People used to wear dungarees back then. It was like a cool thing, right? I don't know if it was the same for the rest of the country, but in South London, in Brixton, people used to wear dungarees. Even like grown men in their 20s. So he had these dungarees on, and his dungarees were like ripped to bits and all that kind of stuff. And I guess my shirt was like half ripped and all this, right? We fought to a standstill in the street. And I remember going home, yeah, and I was speaking to my brother. Oh, yeah, I just had a fight with so-and-so. And I remember telling my brother I didn't get hit in the fight. Yeah, because obviously he's going to say that he won. I'm saying I won the fight. I was like, how can he say he won? I didn't even get hit. And my brother said, no. My two boys said you got hit quite a lot. I was like, really? I don't recall getting hit. The Joker says, Hatman, have you ever been knocked out or dropped, be it in the street, sparring, or as an amateur fight? Never been knocked out in a boxing ring. I've been dropped in a street fight before. I got dropped in school. I got jumped by 3 guys and got dropped when I was about 14. Cracked my tooth and ended up with like, I don't know, 15, 16 stitches in my mouth from that incident. But I wasn't knocked out, but I did get dropped. Yeah. I've never actually been knocked out. Mortal Men says, Hatman, what's happened to Anthony Yard as you don't hear of him now since he went freelance? Has he gone freelance? You know, we started off this show talking about Frank Warren and his powerful lawyers. Well, have his powerful lawyers, I assume they have, gone to work on Mr. Yard. Because, yeah, he and Tunde haven't said a word about their situation for a long time now. Mr. Yard is parked up on the shelf. So, yeah. Someone shout to someone for the super chat. He says, which fanboys are the worst? Wilder, AJ, Fury, or Canelo? Well, Wilder fanboys are not really a factor anymore. They've all evaporated. AJ fanboys are generally not that bad compared to some other fanboys in boxing, but you do get some of them that are straight up psychotic. I mean, there was a guy in the run-up to the Dubois fight who kept turning up in the comment section of my videos challenging me for saying that AJ doesn't have a good chin. And the guy was saying AJ's got one of the best chins in the heavyweight division. I'm thinking, you know what? Whatever this guy's smoking, one of the best chins in it. Unbelievable. Unreal. But that's the fanboy mindset. You know, the guy they support has no weaknesses at all. It's incredible. that they can be that delusional. So, but overall, the Fury fans at their worst were right up there. I mean, right up there. Canelo fans, I haven't really had that much issue with them, to be fair. Yeah, you'll get a few now and again having a little pop and saying this, that, and the other. But Canelo is in the Spanish-speaking world. So, you know, presumably a lot of Canelo fans are not really watching English-speaking YouTube channels that much, you know. I don't know, but I haven't had that much issue with Canelo fans over the years. Some AJ fans are a little off, but they're not that bad. Fury fans and Wilder fans at their peak were just unreal. I think the Wilder fans were maybe the worst because they were as delusional as he was. And his delusion was the worst thing I've ever seen in boxing. I've never seen a fighter that delusional come up with as many bizarre excuses for losing as he did. Crazy. So I'm going to say the Wilder fans back in the days were the worst. Yeah. And in terms of all time, you know, not included in the list you gave me there, this is probably going to offend some people in the chat right now. Mike Tyson fans have got to be the worst of all time. And the thing is, I've always been a massive admirer of Mike Tyson as a fighter. Still am. He's my favorite heavyweight to watch, without a shadow of a doubt. Yeah, I don't watch many heavyweight fights from the past anymore. I watch a few here and there because I've seen most of the major heavyweight fights from the 60s and the 70s and the 80s a zillion times over growing up, right? The only one I go back to consistently is Mike Tyson fights. Yeah, so I'm not a Mike Tyson hater. I'm not somebody who, you know, doesn't like watching him or this, that. No, I love watching Mike Tyson. But good God, his fans don't half talk rubbish. I mean, unbelievable amount of the most casual, illogical nonsense. You know, for example, I saw a clip earlier on today of Evander Holyfield, some highlights of the Holyfield-George Foreman fight, where Holyfield was lighting Foreman up like a Christmas tree with these, you know, 20-punch combinations. And somehow George Foreman was staying on his feet. Almost the entire comment section was full of people slagging Holyfield off. And of course, they're all Mike Tyson fans. They were saying that, oh, has Holyfield always been dirty? Look at him hitting George Foreman with elbows. He literally didn't hit Foreman with any elbows in the entire clip. Yes, he was punching through the target. That's what you're supposed to do. That's what Mike Tyson did. Go look at Mike Tyson when he dropped Larry Holmes the first punch. He follows through the target. His elbow almost catches Larry Holmes. In fact, it might catch him. And somehow, oh, that's Holyfield deliberately using elbows. I mean, go watch Mike Tyson when he fought Tyrell Biggs. Deliberately headbutting man in the face. Okay, and then you want to complain about, I mean, honestly, Mike Tyson, and they don't stop, they're relentless. All these decades after Mike Tyson stopped, well, he's going to box Jake Paul right now, but his proper career ended decades ago. And his prime was in the 80s. All right, we're talking about over 30 years ago. Yet and still, it's as if Mike Tyson was still fighting now in terms of the way his fans behave. Unbelievable, honestly. Those are the kind of Instagram posts where I can't even, you know, reply anybody because you're just going to be inundated by idiots. So I'm just like, you know what, let me just leave it. Let me just leave it. These guys are too bigger fanboys to be reasoned with. So of all time, oh my God, the Mike Tyson fans, they're too much, man. They're too much. Glad Tidings says, Hatman, did you know any of the Brixton gangs back in the days? You couldn't not know the Brixton gangs. You couldn't not know them. It's impossible to not know them. You know, back in the 80s and the 90s, especially the 90s, the center of Brixton, everybody was out there on Front Street. All the bad men were right there, posted up. It's not like a lot of neighborhoods today where you don't really see the bad guys, you know, they're not really on display. No. In Brixton back in the days, all the dangerous people were right there on the front line, on Front Street, every day. Some of them owned shops and businesses and stuff like that, and they were in there all day. And the people associated with them were around all day, right in front of, you know, right on Cold Harbour Lane, on Brixton High Road, in the market, everywhere. So it wasn't like, you know, everybody knew the gangsters and the gangs, and everybody knew them back then. You couldn't not know them. They're right in front of your face every day. And in fact, it was hard to avoid interacting with them. It's hard to avoid it, especially if you're a strapping young man who, you know, has a strapping young, you know, teenager who has a reputation for fighting and boxing. Some of these guys are going to come and try to put their arm around you and take you under their wing. And, you know, almost try and not take no for an answer. Not in a Diddy way, all right? Let me put a pause on that. Not no Diddy business. But in, you know, like a little recruitment business. So I had a run-in with a notorious Brixton figure. All right, back in the days. Little run-in with him because he tried to, you know, tried to recruit me. And I was just like, nah, I'm doing my own thing. And, you know, people act funny. Some of these people who, you know, have a certain amount of power, they think that they own everybody. Certainly the little teenage youths, they think they own you and, you know, whatever. Yeah, Brixton is totally different now. It's nothing like it was back in the 90s. Totally different. But in the 90s, it was rough. Very rough. In the 90s, Brixton was it had to be the roughest place in the UK by far in the 90s. I can't imagine anywhere was worse than that. Maybe Moss Side might have ran it close back in the days in South Manchester, but nah, Brixton, them times, was the roughest place in the UK. It was very rough. I mean, Brixton, those times, there were shootings every single day. I'm not exaggerating. At the height of like the crack epidemic in Brixton in the 90s, every day shootings, every day, even in broad day. Every single day. Cold Harbour Lane, I mean, there were shootings down there multiple times a week. It was just a constant thing. And there was people posted on Brixton High Road selling what they were selling in broad daylight, 24/7. Yeah, anyone from Brixton or who went through Brixton in the 90s knows what I'm talking about is facts. Them times, you come out the train station, Brixton train station, or the tube station, and you're already being offered stuff. Sometimes in the station, people trying to sell you, you know, food. I'm not talking about the food that you eat. Right? Come out of the train station, you walk down Brixton High Road, up towards the Ritzy, And it's just full of people trying to sell you what they're selling you in broad day. That's how it was back then. Yeah, all the way through the market. I mean, yeah, it was wild. It felt lawless those times. Brixton felt lawless. Yeah, Broom says, I grew up Tulse Hill, early 90s. I confirm it was crazy. It was crazy. There was people, you know, this must have been early 2000s now. This wasn't even in the 90s. I remember I was still living in Brixton at the time. I remember I was walking through Brixton Market early morning to go to my job. Yeah. This must have been about, well, not early night. Let me say this was about 2005, maybe 2006, 2007 maybe. Or perhaps a bit later than that. Maybe let's call it 2007, 2008. And I remember walking through Brixton Market and there was some young kid. He can't have been any more than 20. And he was just looking shifty. And this is in the morning, like, I don't know, 8 in the morning. And it's busy at that time with people, you know, opening their market stalls and whatever, going to work. And I'm going to work now. I'm walking through the market to go to the tube. And this youth stops me and he's like, yo, bruv. And he starts talking to me, or yo, blood, whatever. And he pulled up his top, yeah? And he had a Mac 10. He had a Mac 10 in his trousers, yeah? And he was asking me if I've seen the boy them, which means the police. You seen the boy them around there? And I love you, bro. He started saying all this weird stuff, yeah? I'm like, I don't know what this little youth is on, if he's high or what, but yeah, don't know why he's trying to friends me up at this time in the morning. Like, you know, I don't know. Was he not from the area? I'd never seen him before. He was a lot younger than me. But that's what Brixton was like. It was just like wild. People walking around with shotguns on the, you know, on Brixton High Road, up and down Cold Harbour. It was just a madness. Leo Max says, how did it calm down? Well, they had, the Joker says, have you seen Dylan White in real life? Many times. There was a big crackdown in the early 2000s in Brixton, a big crackdown where they took out, you know, the police took down a lot of the biggest dealers in the Brixton area. And it massively reduced the amount of business of that type that was going on there overnight. And this operation involved police going undercover as addicts. Right? So they had to, like, you know, I guess put fake teeth in and, you know, make themselves look like junkies. And they went undercover for, like, I don't know how long it was, a number of months, a year. And they did this operation. And I remember after that, it's like the strip was empty after they did that big sting and took down loads of people with that one. They took down so many people, big fish, and, you know, all sorts of people got taken. That was in the early 2000s when they did the undercut. I forget what they called it. But yeah, that operation, nothing was really the same after that, from what I remember. You know, I mean, I remember there was a time when the South London Press, which is, you know, obviously a South London newspaper, I remember it got so bad in Brixton that there was a headline. You guys look this up. You'll probably find it if you do an image search on Google. there was a headline of squirrels on crack. It had a picture of a squirrel. It said squirrels on crack in Brixton. Yeah, because the shotters, yeah, they were hiding a lot of their stuff in people's front gardens and whatever. And so allegedly, supposedly, squirrels had started finding it and eating it. They'd be getting high. That's how prevalent it was. At that time, there was like, I remember the police said there was well over 100, something like 150 crack dens in Brixton them times. Okay, and Brixton is not a massive area. You're talking about what? 2 miles by 2 miles Yeah. Like, let's say, yeah, 2 miles by 2 miles, maybe in diameter. That's about how big it is. And within that space, you got like them times over 150. I don't want to trigger the algorithm here. Let's call them CRACK dens. Yeah. So it was wild. And with all that comes all the violence and, madness. O'Neill says Harlesden, Stonebridge, Tottenham was bad outside London, Manchester, Mossad, Liverpool, Toxteth. Yeah, I mean, Stonebridge back in the days was very rough. Before they knocked all the tall high rises down, it was very rough those times. Oh gosh, yeah, Stonebridge is very rough. But why Brixton, I would say, was rougher than those areas is because it was bigger. Yeah, Stonebridge was a massive estate, but Brixton has got multiple estates all the way through it. That's one of the things that differentiated it from places like Harlesden. It just had far more estates. Loughborough estate was big, Angeltown, Tulse Hill, the Guinness estate, all the different estates, Barrier Block, all that. Somerleyton. Brixton just had so many different estates. I mean, you could live in Brixton for years and there's still estates that you haven't yet discovered in Brixton. There's that many of them. It's just like estates on top of estates. Anyway, how do we end up talking about Brixton? This is a boxing show. Sydney says, I guess he's replying to somebody, Cape Flats. Oh, well, Cape Flats, obviously, if you're from Cape Flats, yeah, disregard everything I'm saying here. Cape Flats makes any neighborhood that's ever existed in Britain look like Disneyland. Yeah, Cape Flats is next level. Cape Flats is just crazy. Mitchell's Plain and all that, crazy. I'm glad I don't live there. I'm glad I never lived there, Dear, oh dear. Imagine ending up in a South African prison. Like Pollsmoor. No, thank you. Shade says, have you ever knocked out someone? Loads of people. Knocked loads of people out. I couldn't tell you how many. I'm not trying to be a tough guy or anything, but, when I was growing up, fighting is what you did. Unless you wanted to get bullied, you were going to have to fight people. Loads of people. In street fights, when I was a bouncer, in sparring, in amateur fights, loads of people. In school. Just to give you one example, way back in the days, I was living in a hostel. And yeah, a lot of people, you're from South London back in the days, you might find yourself in a hostel at one point. So I was staying in a hostel, and in this hostel, I eventually got my own room, but in this particular hostel, when I first went in there, you were in like a dorm, and so there was like bunk beds in there, and I guess there was maybe 3 bunk beds in the one I was in, so that might have been like 6 people in that room. And anyway, this one guy moved in. He was a tall guy, like 6'7", and he was just like obnoxious. Yeah, he was just unnecessarily antisocial. So he'd go in like, the common areas, and when people were sitting down watching TV, he'd go in there and snatch up the control and change the channel. And nobody don't want to say nothing to him because he's so big, right? And he's like really obnoxious and stuff like that. So he was kind of like a bully type guy. And anyway, one time at night, right? And he used to drink as well. And so one time at night, we're all sleeping. Yeah, I'm on the top bunk. And this guy comes in and he turns the light on. And there's three things with me that will set me off. In fact, there's probably more than that. But three things in particular that really set me off. If you mess with my money, if you mess with my food, or if you mess with my sleep, those things will have me lose my ish real quick. Okay? So the guy being this, imbecile that he was, turned the light on with no regard for anybody else, who was sleeping, and then sat down on his bunk there. He'd come in drunk or whatever. And as soon as that happened, I lost control. You know when you lose control? Like I used to have a temper where I cannot control myself when I was younger. So it's like it wasn't even me. You know when you're making rational decisions in your head? Yeah? This is a rage that overpowers your decision-making process. And so that took over instantly. Can you imagine? I'm out of sleep, and within seconds, the rage has taken over, and I've leaped out of the bunk. I started punching up this guy. Yeah, knocked him out cold. And when he was on the floor, I was trying to drag him out first, but one of the other guys who never had the heart to actually step to the guy himself, he started, now piping up and having a go at the guy, saying, "Oh, no, you're a little, bitch, not so tough now, are you?" And I'm like, hang on, where was all this talk for this guy for these past weeks when he's been doing all this stuff and you ain't been reacting? Now that I do something to him, I mash him up. Now you want to get all, whatever. So anyway, I took the guy, dragged him out, and he was damn heavy, he's a big guy. Dragged him out of the room, took his keys off him, and just locked him out. Yeah. Anyway, many incidents over the years where I've had to punch up people and do stuff. When I was a bouncer, those of you who haven't heard my Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series, I go through all that where I'm fighting people and scrapping with nutcases and drunks and people that are high on God knows what, In fact, working as a bouncer put me off nightclubs. You know that? After working as a bouncer, I was like, I'm never going in a nightclub again. Honestly, these places are awful. I never wanted to go in a nightclub after working as a bouncer. Black Dynamite says, when you are waiting on a council house, you stay in a hostel. That's right. Either when you're waiting on a council house, or waiting on a council house, or coming out of prison. There are a number of reasons why you might be staying in a hostel, but those are two of them. Shout out to Famo. He says, love from Nigeria. Staying awake to watch you. Shout out to the Nigerian crew. Leo says, Hammond, do you remember the ladies on Leicester Square back in the days? Yes, Leicester Square was a great place. You had Sound Republic. Who remembers Sound Republic back in the days? It was Sound Republic. I used to go to a rave in Leicester Square called Yum Yums. Yeah, I think the club was called Gas Club. I swear it was called Gas Club, but the night was on a Tuesday night called Yum Yums. And it was like a hidden gem because normally people go raving on the weekend, but this was a Tuesday night at Gas Club. And whenever you go to Gas Club on a Tuesday, it was ramming there. This is just off Leicester Square. Yeah, it was ramming there. You'd expect, not see that many people, but no, it was always like wall to wall in there on a Tuesday night. Yeah, Gas Club was the place. Bar Rumba, yep. There was what's the jungle place called? I'm not talking about jungle music. What was it called? Rainforest Cafe. Yeah. I used to be kicking in there as well back in the days. Rainforest Cafe. I remember going to an after carnival rave at Rainforest Cafe with like 10 girls. Oh my gosh. I was on I was a next level Gallus back in those days. Yeah, I went there with like 10 gal. Rainforest Cafe. The Shade says, y'all had Rainforest Cafe. I thought that was only a Canadian thing. I got no idea what kind of thing it is, but yeah, we had Rainforest Cafe. That was right off Leicester Square. And yeah, it used to be, there was Cameos. Now we're moving up to Regent Street. No, hang on, Cameo. No, Cameos is Hackney, isn't it? Where was the place I'm thinking of? There was a bunch of places off Regent Street, which I've forgotten the name of now. They had, you know, all kind of different hip hop and bashment and R&B and garage nights. Is it Cameos? It begins with a C. And in Leicester Square, there was also Storm. Yeah, some of you guys might remember a little sweat box there called Storm. Leo Max says London's nightlife hits different, can't beat it. Well, maybe back in the days. I haven't been out for many years. Too old for all that. But as I understand it, nightlife now is pretty dead. It's pretty dead. I think the nightclub scene in Britain has died a death. The peak of the clubbing scene was the 90s up until the early 2000s. But now, as I understand it, the nightclub scene is dead. But, you know, in the 90s, they had the super club era. You guys remember that? So they were building all these super clubs. In London, they had Ministry of Sound, which was a super club. In Liverpool, they had Creamfields. In Manchester, they had Hacienda. They may have had a few in Manchester. Any of you who are from the Manchester area, remind me of some of the clubs they had there. Hacienda was notorious, right, because of the characters it attracted. Fabric, of course, yeah. That was one of the newer super clubs because Ministry and all that came before Fabric. Fabric had the speakers under the floor, the subwoofers under the floorboards. There was Turn Mills. You guys remember Turn Mills in Farringdon? Went Turn Mills many a time. Sankey Soaps, yeah, heard of that one. Glad Tidings says pubs and clubs are in the dustbin of history. Yeah, pretty much now. Yeah. People are less social these days. That's the irony, right, of social media. They call it social media when really it's anti-social media. It gives people an excuse for not socializing in real life. Not meeting new people, you know? Or even meeting up with people who they do know. Because back in the days before the internet and before social media, the only way to speak to a friend, you know, and have an in-depth conversation with a friend is either over the phone or to see them in real life. Because there was no internet to speak of, no social media. And calls were not cheap back then. It's not like today we can talk, you know, indefinitely, pretty much for free on WhatsApp or whatever, even internationally. Back then, yeah, you didn't want to run up the phone bill. So if it's a friend you ain't seen for a while, you're going to go to his house. You're actually going to interact with people. You're going to go to the places where, you know your friends hang out. Whereas today, you know, somebody's got a relative they haven't seen for a while. Rather than actually going to see them, they'll just message them. You know, it gives them an excuse not to actually go see the person. Yes, we're taking a trip down memory lane. Relationships are so authentic. Yeah, social media has definitely made the social aspect of the human experience worse. Yeah, social media has actually made it worse. Definitely. Definitely. It's messed up so many things, social media. That's the irony of it. Leo says, Hatman, who took a worse beating, AJ or Shannon Briggs against Klitschko? Shannon Briggs took a worse beating because he had the chin to actually stand up to a worse beating. AJ obviously got knocked out badly. That was brutal. But Shannon Briggs took way more punches and way more damage. But because he had a good chin, he could stand up to it for 12 rounds. Although the referee that night, Ian John Lewis, in my opinion, was disgraceful. I've seen many fighters over the years get seriously injured and even lose their lives. That fight should have been stopped many times. It wasn't competitive, and Ian John Lewis allowed it to continue. That was a horrible, horrible display of refereeing in that fight. Leo Mack says, social media plus lockdown. Yeah, can you imagine? These prison terms. We're putting you on lockdown like you're bloody prisoners. No, thank you. I'll be outside every day. Ain't putting me on lockdown. But yeah, it's probably that whole period, 2020 to 2023, it messed up so many businesses. Definitely the nightclub industry was hurting after that, and the pubs and all that. And it kind of shifted the way that people interact even more. So yeah, I get the point. Me too, King Khan. Me too. Day one, I was like, I'm not accepting any of this. I'm outside every day. I don't care. Nobody can't tell me nothing. 100%. I didn't go for none of that stuff. The Joker says, Hatman, do you see the recent article about Joseph Parker? Apparently he's bulked up to 270 pounds because he wants to be more powerful, brain dead. Well, he bulked up a bit for the Joyce fight and it turned out horribly for him. It turned out horribly. Right, somebody just retracted their comment there about Tim Westwood. Not sure why. But yeah, Westwood used to have a rave in Hammersmith at the Palais. That's where his rave was originally, at the Hammersmith Palais. And that was going for a while until trouble caused it to be shut down. Onyx actually performed at the Palais on a Westwood thing. And then he moved it to Tottenham, Seven Sisters. And it was called, God, what was the name of that place in Seven Sisters where Westwood had his rave? It had a couple of different names, as nightclubs do. You know, the name changes over time. But I can't remember the name of that spot that Westwood had his rave in Tottenham, near the police station there in Seven Sisters. What was the name of that place? Temple. Okay, yeah, Temple. But it was called something else as well, though, wasn't it? I saw it was called something else. Oh, there was another name. Stratford Rex. I was about to mention Stratford Rex. Yeah, that was definitely lit back in the days. Rex. Yeah, Robert O'Donoghue, ditto. The only jab I've taken since I was about 12 has been in a fight. Club UN, thank you. King Cot, that's the one. Club UN. Club UN, that's what it was called. That's the name I was thinking of. Club UN. Yes, Club UN. Dreams, of course. Dreams in Harlesden, yep. All the yardies and fake yardies used to go there. I swear Chris Goldfinger used to have his regular spot at Dreams, right? And Goldfinger. Who was Goldfinger's friend who got deleted? What was Goldfinger? Because there was a rumor about who did that to Goldfinger's friend. What was Goldfinger's friend who got deleted called? He's another DJ. What was his name? When I say deleted, I mean R.I.P. What was Goldfinger's friend name? I forget what he was called. But I remember he, went into the grave, and the talk of the town was that Elephant Man had something to do with it. DJ Village, that's his name, DJ Village. Yeah, when DJ Village, there was all kind of stuff, all kind of rumors about what really happened with DJ Village. David Kenny says deleted, yes. Decommissioned from existence. That's a good way to describe it. You got to be careful with these YouTube algorithms. They don't like certain words, to do with anything violent, because they'll just trigger and demonetize the video. So you got to be careful. Leo says, Hatman, have you ever seen the movie City of God back in the days? Yeah, the Brazilian movie. Seen that? Good film. I also saw a South African movie, which is kind of similar, called Sotsi. That's a good film too, Sotsi. Somebody saying Eubank stuck it on them. Yeah, Eubank stuck it on the promoters. But speaking of Eubank, a good friend of mine, his dad actually grew up with Eubank Sr. His dad actually grew up with him. And he said Eubank Sr. was always a character. He also grew up with Michael Watson. Now, they're from different parts of London, but Eubank moved around a lot, even when he was young. He was here, there, and everywhere. And he said that Michael Watson, this is my friend's dad, he said Michael Watson was an unbelievable street fighter. He said he saw Michael Watson, knock out like 3 guys by himself in street fights. He said he was an unbelievable street fighter. Yeah, LD Phoenix says Hearn's silence throughout spoke volumes. The look on Hearn's face. Let me switch it back to the Eddie Hearn image. During that press conference, Eddie Hearn's face. Look there. That's when the camera focused in on Eddie when Eubank Jr. was slagging them all off. That's how Eddie Hearn's face stayed. Oh my gosh. I can't get over the way Eddie looks in that shot. Yo, Eddie. It's like he's worried that he's about to get exposed, right? That's the facial expression he's got there. Oh dear, the amount of times Eddie Hearn's been embarrassed at press conferences. Derek Chisora loves doing it. He loves sticking it on Eddie Hearn all the time. In interviews, press conferences. He'll always just start picking on Eddie Hearn. It's the funniest thing. Linkage says, where does Eubank's voice come from? The man is from South London and lived in the Bronx. Well, his dad was an eccentric Jamaican who loved all things English. And a lot of the old school Caribbeans, you know, the older generation, they were like that. They loved the Queen, you know. I had family members, pictures of the Queen up, you know, in the Caribbean, pictures of the Queen up, you know, in the living room and stuff like that. So, you know, there was a certain generation of Caribbeans who just loved England because they were raised, you know, in an English colony, to see England as the motherland. Yeah. And it would seem that Eubank Sr.'s dad was one of those types, and he just was in love with all things English, but not like working class English, not the commoners, but the aristocracy and royalty. That's what he aspired to be like. And that's why you hear Eubank Sr. come out with things like, you know, Queen Elizabeth II was my role model growing up. And she was my role model even in boxing. She taught me how to conduct myself. It's wonderful. He go on Talk Sport, go on these monologues about Queen Elizabeth, you know. And anyway, his dad was apparently like that as well. So Eubank Sr. took what his dad was doing, you know, talking like a British aristocrat, to the next level. He really lived it, because his dad used to do just like English impressions, whereas Eubank Sr., you know, who we call Eubank Sr. today, Chris Eubank, he went fully into character. He embodied the character of the English aristocrat. And it's hilarious. I'm glad he did it, because, yeah, Eubank Sr.'s weird, you know, English aristocrat knockoff character is just pure entertainment. It's like something out of WWE. You know, if he'd gone and been a WWE wrestler rather than a boxer, you can imagine Vince McMahon coming up with a concept like that for an Englishman. You know, I think he did. I think there were certain English wrestlers who they tried to give that type of image to. So I thought it was just hilarious, you know, with the monocle and the jodhpurs on and the boots and all that. It just, yeah, the whole thing for me was pure entertainment. I loved it. That was great. If he was just like a regular South London guy, we've seen too many of those over the years. Gets a bit boring. I want to see something different. I want to see something eccentric and entertaining. I don't want to see the same old personality, you know, ex-con and boxing kept me out of prison. That's a cliche. There's like a million guys in boxing with that story. And even though Eubank Sr. has that story as well, he didn't want to tell that story. He wanted to be something totally different from that. Even though he grew up as a thief, yeah, in South London and all that. Eubank Sr. used to steal from Savile Row. So he used to go to central London and actually steal expensive suits and stuff. And stuff like that. Because even at a young age, he wanted to be seen as like regal and all that kind of thing. Coppen says, did you used to watch The Real McCoy back in the days? Have you seen the Eubank sketch on it? Yep, I used to watch The Real McCoy. Seen every episode. Saw the Eubank episode where he was like in his kitchen, you know, with the yellow shorts on, topless, and talking to his wife, Karen. And, you know, after the fights, he'd always say, I love you, bad Karen, and all this stuff. Yeah. Eubank was just, what a bizarre character. What a bizarre character. Yeah, the sheriff thing. I mean, that's just gold as well. The way his mind works is so strange. Walking around wearing this sheriff badge, talking about protect and serve. Like, has he actually lost it? Because he's getting, I mean, most people do, but he was already eccentric to start with. He's getting more eccentric with age. He's getting even weirder. He's just so weird at this point. The whole sheriff badge thing. I actually miss Eubank Sr. being interviewed in the media. I wish he would return to boxing to give off some more jokes. The parliamentary procedure. Yes, can we get some parliamentary procedure in here? Yeah. The warrior code, of course. How could I forget that? The warrior code. He likes quoting all these like old poets and whatever from back in the days, you know, like Kipling and stuff like that. That's reciting all their poems. Oh yeah, says Ray Mercer versus Michael Moorer, who wins? Ray Mercer by knockout. Ray Mercer by knockout. Moorer didn't have the chin, and Mercer had a tremendous chin in his prime. I mean, he had an iron jaw, and he was aggressive as hell. Exactly the kind of fighter I would pick to beat Michael Moorer, at heavyweight at least. Moorer was a very good boxer, very skilled, but he just couldn't take a punch at heavyweight. He wanted a boxing match to break out with his opponent. He didn't want you to actually start sticking it on him, because then he's in trouble. So yeah, I got Ray Mercer all day in that fight. A motivated Ray Mercer, because Mercer had issues with drink, you know? He'd get depressed, apparently, and start drinking and putting on loads of weight, and, you know, the dodgy fights with Jesse Ferguson where he looked terrible. But when he was on it, he was a formidable fighter, Ray Mercer. Tremendous chin, very aggressive. He could punch with both hands. Good combination puncher, pretty quick. Glad Titan says Moorer was also a big puncher. Yeah, but not the kind of puncher that would put a dent in Ray Mercer. I mean, you go watch that Tommy Morrison fight. The shots that Mercer took in that fight, it would have put a lot of heavyweights to sleep. Or the Lennox Lewis fight that somebody mentioned there. I mean, good God, the shots that Lewis hit Ray Mercer with, the uppercuts and the combinations, and Mercer weren't going nowhere. And in fact, Mercer's chin was never the same after that, because he suffered nerve damage in his neck in the Lennox Lewis fight. And a while later, he had to have that operated on. And after that operation, his punch resistance was gone. Literally, like overnight after that operation, gone. Punch resistance, finished. But that's a measure of how many shots he took from Lennox Lewis. He ended up with nerve damage in his neck from that fight. He took so many hard shots. Coppen says, was Glenn McCrory and Ian Darke the best commentary team we've had in UK boxing? For me, probably yes. For my taste anyway. I thought it was a fantastic duo, Glenn McCrory and Ian Darke. Ian Darke in particular, for me, is probably the best UK commentator of all time. I know some people like Reg Gutteridge, some old school people like Harry Carpenter, and so on. Jim Watt, I always liked him, but I want to say Ian Darke was the best. And I know he came from a football background and people try to discredit him because he started off as a football commentator. Like, a commentator can't be into more than one sport. I mean, come on. Plenty of you guys are into multiple sports, right? So why is it that Ian Darke, because he started off as a football commentator, can't be a good I mean, whatever. A tree is known by its fruits. And I watched many a fight that Ian Darke commentated on, and he was fantastic. I think Ian Darke was the best. And the only person who I like more than I wouldn't say this guy is a better commentator than Ian Darke, but I liked him maybe as much or more. And that is a guy whose name is currently escaping me. What was his name? Steve Holdsworth. He was the Eurosport boxing commentator. And the reason I liked Steve Holdsworth is because he was the only UK commentator I've ever seen who used to troll during his commentaries. He would troll the fighters and all this kind of stuff. And I accepted that from Steve Holdsworth because he was an ex-boxer himself. If you ever see Steve Holdsworth, he's got a flat nose, looks like a typical pug, right? So he was an ex-boxer who would commentate, and his commentary was so sarcastic, and he was always trolling the fighters. It was hilarious. It was hilarious. But because he was kind of in obscurity as a commentator over on Eurosport, where they do a lot of like smaller fights and random fights from overseas, his bosses just gave him free reign to pretty much say what he wanted. So he was always trolling the, if somebody was beating up a journeyman, he'd be making jokes about him and all that kind of stuff. Now, in America, that type of commentary was far more common. I mean, in the 90s, that was just standard. Yeah, they'd always be trolling the fighters and whatever. Today, not so much. But back in the days, there's a lot of trolling going on with American commentary. But in the UK, Steve Holdsworth was the only one who used to do that. He used to make so many jokes. It was like lads banter. That's like proper lads banter, not the kind of PC stuff that they have on UK commentary today. Not like proper, near the knuckle lads banter that Steve Holdsworth was doing on the Eurosport boxing. Free Will says, I don't know about Jim Watt. Well, I think Jim Watt was great. Jim Watt actually, after his daughter passed away, he couldn't take the constant backlash from UK fans because Jim Watt was actually trying to be objective. He wasn't trying to be one of these commentators that comes down heavily every time on the side of the Brit. He tried to resist that. He tried to be neutral. And because he tried to be neutral, he caught absolute hell from the British fans. Like, it got to the point where it was just ridiculous. I go into my Facebook group, and it was just full of people slagging off Jim Watt. Why? Because he's trying to be neutral in the commentary. Now, the irony is, they all slag off commentators for not being neutral. So, Jim Watt was ahead of his time. I thought he was great. Jim Watt was like the Alan Hansen of boxing. Alan Hansen in football. The defense is terrible defense. shocking defending and all that. Yeah, Jim Watt was like that, but in boxing. Punchies in bunchies. His legs are gone, Reg. He's great. Loved him. Just his accent was a pro. I loved his accent. I loved the dramatic nature of the Scottish accent on commentary is great. That was great. In fact, I wish they would bring back another, have another. Where are the Scottish commentators in boxing now? They don't have any Scottish commentators. I used to there was even a guy on Sky who was like a cheeky little boxing reporter. He might still work for Sky, but he doesn't really do much boxing anymore. He was good as well. As the little cheeky reporter with the little, cheeky one-liners and all that. Scottish guy. Where all the Scottish presenters are gone. But Jim Watt was, he was the one. Adam Fitzpatrick says Mike Costello was a better radio boxing commentator than a lead DAZN TV broadcaster. Well, I don't think he is the lead anymore, is he? For most of the big shows. I think DAZN have realized, this guy's not up to the task. So they brought that American guy in. Is he from the UFC or something? They brought the American guy in. And he seems to be the lead now for the big DAZN shows. Because they realize that Mike Costello ain't cutting it. Free Will says, what I said about Jim Watt was when he called Gerald McClellan a coward. That just came into my head. I don't recall him ever calling Gerald McClellan a coward. When McClellan sat out the count against Nigel Benn, he said that McClellan quit. And that's what appeared to be the case at the time, that he quit. Yeah, well, he did quit, but I mean, if Jim Watt had known that Gerald McClellan had a bleed on his brain, then I'm sure he would have been a lot more sensitive about the way he worded it. Okay, none of us knew the condition that McClellan was in. Obviously, he was doing that weird blinking thing throughout the fight, but you don't know. So hindsight is 2020. But yeah, he said McClellan quit, and on the instant replay, I remember him saying that McClellan's head is as clear as a whistle. His eyes are as clear as a whistle or a bell or whatever. But he just didn't fancy it. He swallowed it. He quit. He wasn't to know, He wasn't to know. It's a very ugly thing that happened to him. Glad Tidings says, I think Richie Woodall is pretty good. I agree. I think he's pretty good. Adam says Barry McGuigan is a great pundit. Yeah, he used to do a lot of work with ITV back in the days in Sky. Thank you, Danielle. Todd Grisham. That's the guy. Todd Grisham. Black Dynamite said, what happened to the 6'10 black skeleton? Yeah, he is a radio commentator for real. The only time he really did TV commentary, from what I remember, was when they had the World Boxing Super Series, right? That's when they brought him in for some weird reason to be their lead commentator. Because a radio commentator will call every single punch, right? Describe literally everything that's going on in the ring. That's not necessary for a TV commentator because the viewers can see with their own flipping eyes what's going on. So why are you describing every punch landing when the viewers can see it for themselves? Don't make no sense. What a TV commentator needs to do is live analysis of what's going on. Talk about the tactics. He needs to do this rather than that. The reason he's getting caught with this is because that's happening, etc. Whereas Ron McIntosh, the guy you're talking about, is still describing every punch and every... It's like that don't suit television commentary. It's cool for radio, but television commentary, no. Just weird. Yeah, Jim Rosenthal was a good presenter and good, pretty good commentator. Who's the guy they used to have on Showtime? Was he a WWE commentator? Or was he a UFC commentator? The guy with a real powerful, distinctive voice on Showtime. I'm not talking about Bernstein. He doesn't have a powerful voice. I'm talking about the guy that came from UFC or WWE or something. I thought he was quite good. Is it Mauro? Is that his name? Yeah, I like his commentary style. Adam says, Barry Jones is good, but that strong Welsh accent is tough listening. Yeah, I think Barry Jones is pretty good. I think he's pretty good. I just don't ever want to hear Darren Barker on commentary. And unfortunately, he's always on his own commentary. I mean, there's never a time when he's not there now. I can't listen to that guy. He just says silly things and he just, no. God, they're lucky that I'm not, a big wig at DAZN. I'd be ruthless with the commentary team. Sacking Costello, sacking Barker. If I'm feeling generous, I give him jobs in the mailroom or something. I'll be getting them the hell up out of there. Come on. Letting the side down. David Mene says, I don't rate Adam Smith commentating. I think he over eggs the pudding a bit. Since Eddie Hearn left Sky, some of the commentary has been so bad that it actually makes Adam Smith look good by comparison. And I've never been an Adam Smith fan. But some of the commentary since has been so awful that it's like, you know what? We'd be better off with Adam Smith tonight than this team we've currently got. But I know exactly what you mean by over-egging the pudding, yeah. And there's the respect and all that kind of stuff he comes out with. Yeah, it's a bit corny. Glad Tidings says, Hatman, have you ever heard of a commentator called Will Vanders? The most entertaining commentator you will ever hear. He only does kickboxing though. I don't think so, but it's possible I might have heard him. Over the years, I've watched kickboxing fights and K1 and all sorts of stuff over the years. All sorts of stuff. I used to like, who I used to like as a commentator for MMA was Bas Rutten. Bas Rutten, yeah. I remember there was a Bas Rutten, God, how could you describe it? Self-defense video that used to be on YouTube. I'm not sure if it still is. Maybe it's not. But it was this Bas Rutten self-defense video that was honestly one of the funniest and weirdest things I've ever seen. And the assistant that he had working with him in this self-defense video looked terrified, right? Because Bas was like, some of the moves were a little too realistic. But yeah, Bas Rutten was a great character, hilarious because he was crazy. And yeah, crazy Dutchman. Yeah, Sonny Edwards is a good commentator in the sense that he knows boxing and he analyzes things well. but he's got a little pipsqueak voice. You know, he's got a voice like a little mouse. And to me, that matters. It's not just about how good an analyst you are. You need to have a voice for broadcast. And Sonny Edwards doesn't have it. Pro Calla says, Hatman, do you rate Eubank Jr.'s arrogance and showmanship? Not on the level of his dad, but sometimes it's quite funny. You know, I remember in the run-up to the first Liam Smith fight, where he came in wearing that KFC jacket, and Liam Smith was trying to stick it to him in the presser. And Eubank Jr. said, look, I'm just a guy in a KFC jacket trying to make a living. You know, he said it with that typical deadpan delivery. I'm just a guy in a KFC jacket trying to make a living. So he can be funny. He can be funny. You know, Eubank Jr. is at his funniest when he's managed to wind his opponent up. That's when he really gets funny. The Skyliner says, David Haye is a good pundit. Yeah, I like David Haye as a pundit because he's got personality. Yeah, I don't just want to see guys who know boxing and know how to break fights down. I want them to have personality as well, to keep me entertained, some banter. And David Haye was that guy. He definitely had banter, you know. And David Haye's facial expression just cracks me up. His facial expressions. You know, he gets like really animated, like all the veins in his neck are sticking out. Like, who is that woman from Coronation Street? Whenever she would start talking, like the veins in her neck would start popping out. You know what I'm talking about? There was a woman that wore big glasses on Coronation Street. I think she was married to Ken. Was that guy called Ken? In Coronation Street back in the days. I swear the guy was cool. Was it Ken Barlow's wife? Deirdre Barlow, that's what I'm talking about. Yes, Deirdre Barlow. Like whenever she would start talking, her veins in the neck start popping out, right? And that's how David Haye's neck is. His eyes get proper big and he's all animated. And yeah, just the way David Haye looks just makes me laugh. Des Lynam, okay. Yeah, Des Lynam used to do a bit of boxing back in the days, boxing commentary. The smooth Des Lynam. That's what they used to do, like comedy sketches about Lynam. Who was it that did the comedy sketches? Wynam, Dynam, Lynam. Well, he was like the ladies' man, you know, with the mustache and the smooth delivery. It was kind of like Swiss Tony from the Far Show. You guys remember Swiss Tony? He was one of the best characters on the Far Show, Swiss Tony. Yeah, Black Dynamite says Chris Eubank Jr. was the funniest after the J.J. McDonough fight. Yeah, the traveler that he fought in Saudi, right? And the guy, you know, he flattened the guy and then started slagging him off after flattening him. And then the guy was acting like he wanted a bare knuckle with Eubank in the ring after being flattened. Skyliner says Des Lynam used to present Grandstand. Yup. Pro Calla says, what do you think of that thing Eubanks do when they stand on the apron arrogantly, staring into the crowd and they jump over the rope? I think it's great. His dad was much better at it because his dad was a better showman. Eubank Jr., you know, does his own version. It's not as good. I don't like his ring walkout music. Still Dre. I mean, I like the track. The track's cool, but I don't think it really works as a, you know, boxing music for him. Whereas his dad had Simply the Best. You know, he was a great entrance when Eubank Sr. used to come out to Simply the Best, sneering at the crowd and all that kind of stuff, because he was often fighting in hostile territory. And it'd be like gold in the crowd, and it'd stand on the apron of the ring for ages. It was amazing. It was great. I loved it. I loved the theater of it all. So you have to understand, I grew up in the 1980s as a big Muhammad Ali fan. So I liked all of his theatrics. And I was also a massive WWF, as it was then, fan in the 80s. So I liked all the theatrics, you know, the larger than life characters and the bombastic behavior. I loved all that. So when Eubank Sr. came along, it was right up my street. You know, WWF, then obviously you had Ultimate Warrior and Hulk Hogan and Brutus the Barber Beefcake, the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase with Virgil. You had the Big Boss Man, was the policeman with a truncheon, right? Mentioned Hulk Hogan, right? Obviously the Hart Foundation, Hitman Bret Hart, Anvil Neidhart, Owen Hart and all those. The Bushwhackers, the Legion of Doom. Tugboat, Earthquake, the natural disasters. Ric Flair, I mean, Ric Flair's the man. Ric Flair's promos and, you know, his monologues were just GOAT, you know, GOATed, definitely. Ric Flair. Davey Boy Smith, of course. The British Bulldog. Yeah, Ric Flair. Ric Flair's a legend even now. People like American football players trying to emulate Ric Flair now, you know. That's how much of an impact his character had. And I just found Ric Flair hilarious because he was like this old man with white hair, with like the body of a 70-year-old. And somehow he was beating all these like, you know, 300-pound, 25-year-old wrestlers. I just found it hilarious from then that this old man, you know, white hair was like beating everybody up. Shout out to Peter Hunter for the super chat. He says, have you ever been a fan of or watched Little Britain? Yeah, was never really a fan of it. I wasn't really watching TV by that time. Because I haven't watched TV now. At least not, well, where I live, TV's all in Spanish anyway, so I don't really watch that. But yeah, I haven't really watched TV. The last time I owned a TV of my own was about 2007, 2008. And since then, I've never owned a TV. So anyway, yeah, Little Britain was never a show I really got into. I'm aware of some of the characters, but I was never really into it. Skyliner says, rappers love Ric Flair. That's right, they do. They do. Because, you know, a lot of rap is about self-aggrandizement. And nobody does self-aggrandizement better than Ric Flair. Ric Flair, yeah, nobody could big themselves up better than him. The bizarre characters, I swear the characters in WWE today aren't bizarre anymore. And that was part of what made it so interesting. I mean, Vince McMahon don't own WWE anymore, does he? And McMahon's in a terrible state these days. He's like, dear old, he's really deteriorated his health, you know? Don't know whether that's because he was banging the roids or HGH or whatever he was doing. I don't know. But yeah, McMahon looks in a terrible state. He's like walking with a cane and all that. But back in the 90s, the characters they had in WWE were so bizarre. And that's what made it interesting. These just totally bizarre characters in the 80s and 90s. Like Gold Dust, he was weird. Mankind, obviously, Mick Foley had many different characters, right? He was Mankind, and then he was Mick Foley, and then he was Dude Love. Papa Shango, he's another one, yup. Yeah, these really bizarre. I mean, Macho King Randy Savage was bizarre. Like, why did he talk like that for one? You know, he talked like he was constipated. Macho King, man talked like he was constipated all the time. It was crazy. Cactus Jack, yeah, that was another one of Mick Foley's characters. Cactus Jack, yeah. Oh yeah, Macho King Randy Savage. He had a crazy way of talking. Booker T, he was a G as well, you know, for his gaffes and slip ups. Booker T was hilarious. And Vince McMahon was a great character, you know? Vince McMahon was low-key one of the best characters in WWE. When he started wrestling, I remember, I guess it was during the Attitude Era, when Vince McMahon just turned up one day, you know, because before he was just some old guy in a suit, yeah, middle-aged guy in a suit. But then one day, I don't know where he'd been or what he'd been doing, you know, injected into himself. He turned up and he was like, he was stacked, this guy. He was hench. He had like big arms and a massive chest, and he came like walking out to the ring. I was like, what the hell has happened to Vince McMahon? And then he started wrestling people. That was hilarious. The Vanilla Tech says Rowdy Roddy Piper and They Live. Yeah, great film and great character, Rowdy Roddy Piper. They Live is a must watch. Remind me who directed that again? The guy's directed so many films. God, what's his name, the guy that directed They Live? Forget his name now. Carpenter, thank you, John Carpenter. That's his name. Leo says, do you remember The Undertaker's bell? Yup. The Undertaker with Paul Bearer. You know, talk about bizarre characters. Paul Bearer. The Mouth of the South, you guys remember him? He was another bizarre character with the honky tonk man. Yeah, Paul Bearer, the honky tonk man, Kane. That's like the 90s Attitude Era. The Vince McMahon Power Walk. That's what I'm talking about. Yes. Ravishing Rick Rude, of course. Glad Titan says, Hatman, have you seen The Prestige? Yes. Great film. Christopher Nolan. Great film. You got Christian Bale. What's the guy who plays Wolverine? He's in it as well. Forget his name. But Christian Bale's in there. Michael Caine. You know, a lot of these directors like using the same actors over and over again. I guess they like them and they get a good working relationship with them. Hugh Jackman, thank you. Yeah. And so Chris Nolan has brought many of the same actors back into his movies over the years. Yeah, I do like The Prestige. There's another one which is a similar movie starring another actor whose name escapes me, Ed Norton, called The Illusionist. That's also quite good. But I do prefer The Prestige. You know, it's got Tesla in there and all that. Played by a cameo by David Bowie, which is, a bit random. Yeah, King KO says, $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase. Everybody has their price. I always used to think that the $1 Million Man looked like Noel Edmonds. But like Noel Edmonds on steroids. Shola says David Bowie was born in Brixton. Former Prime Minister John Major was also from Brixton. Don't know if any of you guys remember John Major. He was the Prime Minister after Margaret Thatcher and before Tony Blair in the 90s. He was from Brixton. Vanilla Tech says he was gray colored, man. Yeah, well, in Spitting Image, which was like, was it weekly? I can't remember if Spitting Image was weekly. I think it was weekly, but it used to run in like a series, right? Seasons. And Spitting Image was like a political satire show, British political satire where they had these like latex puppets. And it was mainly political satire, but they also used to do some celebrities and stuff like that, celebrity characters. But there was this like running joke in the media that John Major was boring. The man could literally put a glass eye to sleep. He had this just kind of boring way of talking and boring demeanor and all that kind of stuff. And so in one of the new series of Spitting Image during the 90s, they actually had John Major's puppet with gray skin, to like symbolize how boring he was. All the other characters had like real normal color skin for what they are in real life. But with John Major, they gave him gray skin. And in all the scenes where John Major was in his house, he'd be like sat at the table with his wife, eating a plate of peas, just peas. Having the most boring conversations imaginable, Crazy. Ted DiBiase, the sleeper hold. Yeah, all the special moves. The Attitude Era was great. It was great with Stone Cold and The Rock. When Stone Cold was Stone Cold Stunner in everybody. That's got to be the greatest special move in wrestling. Was the Stone Cold Stunner. It was just made for television. It just came across great. All the times he stunned Vince McMahon. And the reactions when he was Stone Cold Stunner in certain guys, they'd like really ham it up, where they'd be like convulsing halfway across the ring. Hilarious. So yeah, he stunned the entire McMahon family, including Stephanie. I swear there was even a time when Stone Cold stunned some old woman. Was she a member of the McMahon family as well? But it was some old woman, like literally a pensioner age woman, and he Stone Cold stunned her as well. Oh, that was crazy. Yo. Yeah, Devin says Vince McMahon used to oversell the stunner. Yeah, they all did. They were all competing, actually. I saw an interview with Stone Cold where he was talking about how, You know, the guys he was working with were competing with each other to try and sell the stunner. Do you know what I mean? To oversell it. So they were all trying to like outdo each other, overselling the stunner. Also, there was a weird one, right? So there was some wrestler in WWE who, I don't know whether he was Mexican or what, but he used to like, his special move was to put like a sock on his hand, which would look like a snake. And then he'd like attack you with this like snake sock. Yeah, I'm not talking about Jake the Snake. He had a real snake. No, I'm talking about this like Mexican looking guy. And he'd like grab you by the neck as if it was a snake bite. And I think it was a black guy that he did it to. And this black guy sold the snake bite so well that he actually did it too well. And I think he got sacked for some bizarre reason by the WWE. But it was like the best reaction to that snake bite move I've ever seen. Why would you sack him for that? It made no sense. That was like an incredible... The way he sold that was incredible. Oh, he was Italian. Okay, thank you. Brandon Herrera. He was Italian. But the way he sold that snake bite thing, that guy that he did it to, I think he was a black guy, it was like incredible. He should have got a raise for that. Yeah, Triple R says, what even was the stunner? Yeah, the stunner makes no sense, you know, in terms of like the effect it has on people. It makes absolutely, as so many of those wrestling moves, they don't make any sense. Yeah, like the pedigree and stuff like that. Even the people's elbow. I mean, you know, a lot of them don't make no sense. But actually, the more nonsensical they are, the more entertaining they are. Robert O'Donoghue says they banned the tombstone. Yeah, the tombstone was actually dangerous. You know, like when you're kids and you play fighting with your brothers and your friends and you're like tombstoning people. That's probably one of the reasons they banned it, not just to protect the wrestlers, but, you know, the kids that were copying that stuff. Yeah. Pro Calla says, Hammond, do you remember David Hayes' gang comment when he was fighting Audley Harrison? That's got to be one of the wildest things. Yeah, I remember that. I remember when he made that comment and he refused to apologize for it, which I respect, because how could anybody take offense to it? You know, he wasn't condoning that particular thing. He said it was going to be as one-sided as such and such. I don't see why that's... Yeah, anyway. But that's a really UK thing. If a fighter made that comment in America, it wouldn't cause so much, you know, issue. But in the UK, it's like the media got hold of that and made out as though it's like the most outrageous thing in the world. Nah. And David Hay refused to apologize for it. He was like, I'm not apologizing. I'm standing 10 toes down. Yeah, they tried to get David Hay to retract. He was like, nope, 10 toes down. There you go. David Price's suit. 9 healthy toes and 1 broken toe down. 9 toes down. Yeah, David Price says, the people's elbow took 3 to 5 working days to land. Yeah. He had to bounce off the ropes a few times to get momentum somehow to just drop down on somebody. The people's elbow was actually one of the most disappointing special moves. You know, the rock bottom was better. Even though the rock bottom was not that spectacular either, it was still better than the people's elbow. That's why he had to really sell it, because the people's elbow was like an underwhelming move, innit? So he had to really like ham it up and bounce off the ropes a few times and, you know, do the people's eyebrow before he drops down and elbows them. Yeah. Robert O'Donoghue says Hulk Hogan apparently injured himself doing the leg drop. And that was a pretty basic one as well. Hogan's leg drop, you know? Hogan. His character was weird too, right? Like he was like a muscle-bound California roid head surfer type. I don't know exactly what maybe that's an archetype that's more familiar to people from California. I don't know, but it always came across as kind of weird to me. I guess he was like a Muscle Beach guy, right? Guys hangs out on Muscle Beach in California and whatever. Always talking about eat your vitamins and calling everybody brother and all that. Then the weirdest thing was when Hogan went to WCW and he became like Hollywood Hogan. When he came back to the WWE, he like dyed his beard black and he had like flowers around his neck and all that. It was weird. Don't know what that Hollywood Hogan thing was all about. All right, somebody here says, that's what drives me insane when people say that Joshua and Fury have been champions in the worst heavyweight era ever, as if Alex Leopai wasn't a top 10 heavyweight 12 years ago. Indeed. How people can look at the heavyweight division today and say it's terrible is just beyond me. I mean, are they newbies to boxing or what? During the Klitschko era, you had the likes of Alex Leopai. You had the likes of Calvin Brock. Calvin Brock worked as a bank teller when he fought Klitschko. Man was working a day job. He was the number one American heavyweight, Calvin Brock. Most of you never heard of him. And it's a damn good thing you haven't. Right? Calvin Brock was the number one American heavyweight during those days until Eddie Chambers came along. I mean, the Klitschko era was diabolical. Oh, it was awful. In the UK during the Klitschko era, you had Danny Williams, Audley Harrison, Michael Sprott, and Matt Skelton, and Keith Long as well. Okay? And they had some little scraps that were quite good on the domestic scene, but that's all it was. It was a little domestic scene going on in Britain. The world scene was, you know, the Klitschkos. And everybody else was pretty much rubbish for most of the Klitschko era. That's how it was. It was horrible. It was horrible. The Klitschko era was so bad that the American networks stopped showing their fights. That's how bad it was. They were like, you know what, we can't even air this stuff anymore. So for a while, they stopped showing their fights. Occasionally, they would show a Klitschko fight here or there when they were fighting a well-known American like Chris Arreola. But for a long time, I think it was after Vladimir fought Sultan Ibragimov. After that fight, they were like, nah, we can't even broadcast this stuff anymore. It was horrible. Adam F. Patrick says, have you ever listened to Steve Kim, American Boxing Scribe? Yeah, I'm very familiar with Steve Kim. I watched the interview that he did on his show because he's got a channel with some other guy who looks very familiar, like he's been in some TV sitcom or something. A Mexican-American looking guy. And I watched the interview they did with Usyk after the Fury fight. Yeah, the Klitschko era was definitely the dark ages for heavyweight, but it was horrible. And what made the Klitschko era worse is that it ran concurrent to the Mayweather era, which was also awful. Oh God, the Mayweather era was so awful, honestly. It was horrible. Because that whole era was like, it was like a clinic. It was like a demonstration of how to con boxing fans. Mayweather putting on this, clinic about con people. Oh, it was horrible. And that's why there was, so many people like me, when I started off YouTube, doing so many videos about domestic level British fights, because there was more excitement on the domestic UK scene than there was on the world scene. Most Mayweather fights were snooze fests, right? They'd build up to this fever of anticipation, and then it's going to be one guy, pot shotting right hands and jabs for 12 rounds. I mean, that's not entertaining. And then Klitschko's jabbing and grabbing and holding 1,000 times around. Oh no, what a terrible era that was. So we had to keep ourselves entertained watching domestic level heavyweights scrap it out. Like Audley Harrison fighting Michael Sprott twice. And both of those fights ended with spectacular KOs. When Audley got slept in the first fight, oh my days. That was crazy. That was crazy. What was that, a 3-round fight? I think Audley dropped Michael Sprott in the first or second round. And Sprott got off the canvas. Oh my gosh. Oh, that left hook. What? Audley went stiff as a board. And that was a crazy knockout. Crazy. So I'm saying there was more entertainment on the domestic circuit in Britain than world level boxing during that era. Audley got bodied. Oh, that was horrible. That was horrible. And then in the rematch, Audley was getting bashed up the whole fight. He actually hurt his arm. I think it was his right arm. So he couldn't jab. He's a southpaw. And then in the final round, when Audley was a mile behind on the scorecards, he somehow pulled out a left hand from the gods. And he knocked Michael Sprott cold. Oh, gosh. Yo. Sprott went down. He bounced off the ropes before he hit the canvas. That was crazy as well. I was at my friend's house when we were watching that. We both like, whoa, when it happened. We raised the roof off the house, shouting the house down when that punch landed. That was crazy. The final round and Audley landed that left hand. Like, oh my gosh. And it was a weird one as well. If you ever see the instant replay of that punch, Audley lands a straight left hand on Sprott, excuse me. He lands a straight left hand on Sprott, but the palm of his glove was facing towards Michael Sprott. Do you know what I mean? So it was a really awkwardly thrown punch, but it landed with tremendous power, and poor Michael Sprott was out. So that was a hell of a way to get revenge. Poor Sprott was finished. Pro Keller says, if the Klitschko's weren't around at that time, who do you think would have been the champion from that crop of fighters? Possibly one of the British lot, maybe Danny Williams at his best. Possibly, obviously this is over a 10-year period, so there was a lot of fighters that came and went. Odliner Solis was around during that time. Obviously, David Haye was kind of towards the back end of the Klitschko era. But in the middle of it, you had Odliner Solis, who was a useful fighter, but he was, you know, a terrible glutton. 1 second. Yeah, Solis was a tremendous amateur, beat everybody in the amateurs, including David Haye. But, you know, as soon as he escaped Cuba and landed in America, he became, you know, the expanding man. His waistline was, you know, out of control. Every fight, he just got fatter and fatter and fatter. And then when he fought Vitaly Klitschko, he was actually boxing well for like 30 seconds, and then he popped his knee because he was too damn heavy. And that was the end of the fight. First round KO win for Vitaly because my man bust his knee. He got hit with a shot first, yeah, but he tried to put pressure on his knee and it like gave way. And that was the end of Solis. I mean, dear, oh dear, oh dear. So would he have been the number one? Maybe. He had the skills, but he loved his whatever he was eating down there in Miami. Christian says David Haye would have been undisputed. Well, again, David Haye came in at the back end of the Klitschko era. You know, he wasn't around for most of it. Most of it was awful. You know, it was like the Calvin Brocks of the world. There was another Cuban called Gomez. You guys remember him? Kevin Johnson. They dug up Shannon Briggs to fight Vitaly when he was just washed up beyond belief. Who else was there? Calvin Brock, I mentioned him. Leopai, they dug up Mormek when he was like 40 odd to fight Vlad. God, it was awful. Tony Thompson might have been the best, actually. Tony Thompson might have been champion if the Klitschkos weren't around. That's how horrible that era was. Tony Thompson might have been the best. Tony Thompson took up boxing when he was about 30. He took up boxing. Think about it I'm not talking about turn pro. He took up boxing when he was nearly or about 30 years old. And he was like the best challenger that Vlad had for years. Fought him twice. So probably Tony Thompson would have been the guy if the Klitschkos weren't around. You know, for a little bit anyway, he would have been the guy. King KO says Kevin Johnson was a journeyman. Well, when he fought Klitschko, I think he was undefeated. He turned into a journeyman, yeah, but back then he was actually a contender. Marius Wack, you know, he was another Klitschko challenger. Francesco Pianetta, you guys remember him? Obviously, some people might remember him from fighting Tyson Fury. Yeah, he challenged Vlad for the world title. Pianetta. I mean, these guys were so obscure. You know, like, so many of the Klitschko opponents were just totally obscure fighters you'd never heard of before. Pianetta, where do they find these guys? Yeah, Pulev again, that's towards the end of, I think the Pulev fight was 2 fights before Klitschko fought Fury. I think that's right. He fought Pulev, then he fought Bryant Jennings, and then he fought Fury. So that was right at the end when he fought Pulev. Anyway, peeps, I'm going to turn this one in. Thank you all for joining me on this live. And yeah, take care out there. Be good. And I'll catch you on the next one. I'm out.